Should we trust the government? I'd say no, and you'll see why at the end of this video. In 2020, the US Department of Defense, DoD, authorized the US Navy to release video of 3 incidents, one in 2004 and the others in 2015, in which Navy fighter pilots had encountered unidentified aerial phenomena, which is another way of saying UFOs. After a thorough review, the department has determined that the authorized release of these unclassified videos does not reveal any sensitive capabilities or systems and does not impinge on any subsequent investigations of military airspace incursions by unidentified aerial phenomena, DoD noted in the press release. The COVID-19 relief bill passed by Congress in 2020 also included a provision requiring various government agencies to release their files on UFOs. They released an assortment of documents, including the mysterious report of a sighting of multiple fast-moving flying objects over Stalingrad in 1954. So if you want to learn more about UFOs, check all that information out. Number 9. Space Shuttle Challenger. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds into its flight and ended the lives of all 7 crew members aboard instantly. The spacecraft disintegrated 46,000 feet above the air in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Cape Canaveral, Florida at 11:39 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It was the first fatal accident involving an American spacecraft in flight. It was thought that all the astronauts passed away instantly, but it was revealed decades later that some, if not all, of the astronauts survived the initial explosion, as the cockpit cabin had enough protection to not be breached. For 2 minutes and 45 seconds, they were awake and aware as they plummeted towards the Atlantic Ocean, which is terrifying. Understandably, NASA knew that the news of their terrifying death would have crippled the space program even more than it already was, so they kept this a secret. And I'm gonna be honest, I do understand their reasoning for this, but it's just sad. Number 8. Enhanced interrogation techniques. This 2004 report by the CIA's Inspector General, initially released in heavily redacted form by the George W. Bush administration, and then again with fewer deletions by the Obama administration, describes enhanced interrogation techniques used on Al-Qaeda detainees. The techniques detailed in the document include walling, which prisoners were pulled forward and then pushed into a wall, slaps to the face, stress positions, sleep deprivation, and waterboarding, in which the detainee's head is immobilized and an interrogator places a cloth over the detainee's mouth and nose while pouring water onto the cloth in a controlled manner, with the effect of restricting airflow for 20 to 40 seconds and creating the sensation of drowning and suffocation. Another technique involved confining a detainee in a box for up to 18 hours, sometimes with a harmless insect placed inside as well to increase the discomfort. Now that just sounds cruel. Number 7. Heart attack gun. The CIA developed an assassination weapon that was essentially a poison gun. It was a fires a pellet made of ice that was coated with a special toxin made from shellfish. The pellet only left behind a tiny red mark on the skin that would be ignored since there was no blood. The toxin induced a heart attack and left no trace in the victim's blood. Well, how was it created? Well, going to work for the CIA as an 18-year-old high school graduate, Mary Embry was a secretary in a division tasked with devising hidden microphones and other audio surveillance equipment before being promoted to the Office of Technical Services. Eventually, she was ordered to find an undetectable poison. Her research led her to conclude that shellfish toxins were the ideal choice. Unbeknownst to her, Mary had been made a part of Project MK Naomi, a highly secretive program dedicated to crafting biological weapons for the United States Cold War arsenal. Her findings were destined to form the basis of the brass ring of Black Ops, ending the life of a human being and getting away with it. Number 6. Devil Eyes. Devil Eyes was the code name for a secret psychological warfare program in 2005 to 2006 by the CIA to develop an action figure of Osama bin Laden and distribute it in South Asia, especially Afghanistan and Pakistan. The CIA worked in conjunction with toymaker Donald Levine, a former Hasbro executive. Donald designed a 12-inch lifelike figure of bin Laden whose face was painted with a material that, when heated, would peel off to reveal a demon-like visage with red skin, green eyes, and black markings. The goal of the program was to scare the children and their parents to turn public opinion against the real Osama bin Laden or Al-Qaeda. In 2014, the CIA acknowledged the existence of the program but that it had been discontinued after Donald had produced only 3 prototype figurines. One of the 3 known prototypes is believed to be in the ownership of the CIA, but according to the Washington Post, however, an anonymous source in China with direct knowledge of the project said that hundreds of the toys were created and shipped to Pakistan in 2006. What? The government lying? No way. Number 5. Operation PB Success. Codename Operation PB Success was a CIA operation to overthrow Guatemalan President Jacobo Arbenz in June 1954 and end the Guatemalan Revolution. PBS Success was authorized by Eisenhower in August 1953. The operation was granted a budget of $2.7 million for psychological warfare and political action. The total budget has been estimated between $5 and $7 million, and the planning employed over 100 CIA agents. In addition, the operation recruited scores of individuals from among Guatemalan exiles and the populations of the surrounding countries. After its success overthrowing the president, the US installed the military dictatorship of Carlos Castro Armas, the first in a series of US-backed authoritarian rulers in Guatemala. The CIA armed, funded, and trained an army which ended the lives of many civilians. Number 4. Operation Midnight Climax. Operation Midnight Climax was an operation carried out by the CIA as a subproject of Project MK Ultra, the mind control research program that began in the 1950s. It was initially established in 1954 by Dr. Sidney Gottlieb and placed under the direction of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in Boston, Massachusetts. Under the Cold War and fears of the Soviet Union and China, Dr. Sidney felt inspired to investigate methods of mind control. Operation Midnight Climax gave him permission to test drugs on unknowing citizens. So essentially the government just hired sex workers to dose their clients with LSD for mind control research purposes. Official results of these experiments were not released, but accounts from supervisors of the experiments give a little insight to the findings. George Hunter White, an agent at the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and Ike Feldman, a former military intelligence officer who saw San Francisco experiments, noticed that the subjects spoke far more freely when under the influence of a combination of drugs and sex. No one knows where the subjects are now or what effects they may have suffered. Operation Midnight Climax was considered to be so secretive that few people, even in the highest government positions, knew Dr. Sidney existed, let alone was conducting these experiments. However, some senior officers in the CIA knew enough about him to connect his work to LSD. Number 3. Operation Northwoods. Operation Northwoods was a proposed false flag operation against American citizens that originated within the US Department of Defense of the United States government in 1962. The proposals called for CIA operatives to both stage and commit acts of terror against American military and civilian targets, blaming them on the Cuban government and using it to justify the war against Cuba. The possibilities detailed in the document included the remote control of civilian aircraft, which would be secretly repainted as a US Air Force planes, a fabricated shoot-down of a US Air Force fighter aircraft, a fabricated shoot-down of a US Air Force fighter aircraft off the coast of Cuba, the possible assassination of Cuban's immigrants, sinking boats of Cuban refugees on high seas, blowing up a US ship, and orchestrating terror in US cities. This was proposed to President John F. Kennedy, but thankfully rejected it. Then, because of this, US military leaders began to perceive Kennedy as going soft on Cuba, and the president became increasingly unpopular with the military. But good on him for not going through with that. Number 2. Project Minaret. As the result of National Security Archive's efforts, the National Security Agency in 2003 declassified an historical document describing a watch list of critical of the Vietnam War whose overseas communications were tapped by the government from 1967 to 1973. Project Minaret was a domestic espionage project operated by the National Security Agency, which, after intercepting electronic communications that contained the names of pre-designated US citizens, passed them to other government law enforcement and intelligence organizations. Intercepted messages were spread to the FBI, CIA, Secret Service, Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs (BNDD), and the Department of Defense. President Johnson wanted to know if the domestic anti-war movement was receiving help from abroad, one document explains. It expanded to include surveillance of more than 1,600 people, including civil rights leaders Martin Luther King Jr. and Whitney Young, Muhammad Ali, Democratic U.S. Senator Frank Church of Idaho, Republican Senator Howard Baker of Tennessee, New York Times columnist Tom Wicker, and the Washington Post humor columnist Art Butchwald. The surveillance operation continued under the Nixon administration until Attorney General Elliot Richardson, who was concerned about its doubtful legality, decided to shut it down during the Watergate scandal in September 1973. Yeah, that's just creepy. And coming in at number 1 is Project 100,000. Project 100,000 was a controversial 1960s program by the United States Department of Defense to recruit soldiers who would previously have been below military mental or medical standards. This included a lot of Americans with an IQ below 70. Majority of these men didn't have above a 9th grade education. Project 100,000 was initiated by Defense Secretary Robert McNamara in October 1966 to meet the escalating manpower requirements of the American government's involvement with the Vietnam War. These soldiers were mostly given jobs on the front lines of the war, and it was worded as a service project, and they were told they would help them gain skills needed to live a better life after the service. In reality, they were cannon fodder to the DoD and died at a much higher rate than their non-disabled counterparts. These men largely couldn't read, write, or understand why they were in Vietnam or what they were there to do. They suffered more cases of post-traumatic stress, lower unemployment rates, and higher rates of divorce and ending their lives. This is just extremely sad and makes me so angry.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the Disclosure Project. The Disclosure Project is a non-profit organization founded in 1993 by Dr. Stephen M. Greer, who was a physician and UFOologist, and the goal of the project is to bring forth information about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence and their interactions with humanity to the public and government officials. The organization has collected over 800 witness testimonies from military, government, and intelligence officials who have had direct involvement with UFO sightings and extraterrestrial encounters. Literally, this entire group is aimed at doing exactly what we're here talking about today. The Disclosure Project believes that governments around the world have been suppressing information about the existence of extraterrestrial life, and that the truth needs to be disclosed to the public. We love a little whistleblowing. They advocate for the declassification of government files related to UFO sightings and for public hearings on the issue. The organization has received criticism and skepticism from some who believe their claims are unfounded. However, the Disclosure Project continues to push for transparency and the release of information to help us better understand our place in the universe. Did you see those James Webb photos? How are we supposed to understand our place in the universe? Alright, when the universe is that big, buddy, still processing it. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Chilean UFO. Okay, so it turns out that there's been a lot of UFOs spotted in Chile, and the government isn't exactly shy about releasing some of the footage. In 2010, the Chilean government released a series of UFO footage that has since become one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in the history of the phenomenon. The incident began in November 2010 when Chile's National Agency for UFO Research received reports of strange objects in the sky over the country's capital, Santiago. The agency then requested the assistance of the Chilean Air Force to investigate the sightings. The Air Force dispatched a team of experienced pilots to investigate the objects, which had been picked up on radar. The pilots were able to track the objects and capture video footage using advanced equipment. The footage showed multiple objects flying in formation at high speeds, performing maneuvers that seemed impossible, really, for any known aircraft. After careful analysis, the Chilean government concluded that the objects were not weather balloons, they were not aircrafts, or any other known objects. While the government did not explicitly state that the objects were extraterrestrial in nature, the incident has been widely regarded as one of the most credible pieces of evidence in support of the existence of UFOs. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Go Faster video. In 2017, after the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program became more well known, a video was released of an encounter between an FA-18 Super Hornet and some sort of unidentified flying object. This encounter wasn't actually supposed to be released initially, but the New York Times allegedly leaked it, so the government didn't really have much of a choice and decided to release it themselves. This video was the third in a series of 3 videos. We will talk about another one later on in this list. With this particular video, there weren't a ton of details released about exactly what happened during this encounter, but using the Raytheon Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, they were able to capture an extremely fast-moving white oval that was around 45 feet long. The oval had no wings and didn't appear to have any kind of exhaust either. They were tracking the UFO at an altitude of 25,000 feet just above the Atlantic Ocean, and they were shocked as the craft rotated on its axis and flew away. There was no explanation released with the footage because it truly is unbelievable and currently unexplainable. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights UFO incident occurred on March 13, 1997, when thousands of people in Arizona reported seeing a series of bright lights in the sky in a V-shaped formation. Eyewitnesses described the lights as silent and moving slowly across the sky. The event gained significant media attention and became one of the most well-known UFO sightings in history. Some skeptics dismissed it as flares or a military exercise, but many other witnesses remained convinced that they had witnessed something otherworldly. One of the most interesting witnesses in this case is former Arizona Governor Fife Symington. In 2007, he decided to reveal that he had seen the object himself, and not only this, but he described it as not from this world. Despite the multiple witnesses and this government official's testimony, the incident remains a mystery, and to this day, no official explanation has been given for the strange lights seen in the sky. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Project Blue Book sighting. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was once tasked with being an investigator for Project Blue Book, which was the name used to describe a study of UFOs conducted by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to December 17, 1969, when the project was terminated. While his job was meant to be to investigate and essentially debunk UFO sightings, later in life he took to Congress to stand up and explain his own UFO encounter that he was never able to explain away. The moment that truly stuck with him all of these years took place back in 1952. He was sent off to Newfoundland after there were reports that a UFO had crashed off of the coast of St. John's. As he arrived to the scene, there were at least 100 people who all stood and stared into the water, and as he was able to follow their gaze and see what they were all looking at, he couldn't believe his eyes. He recalled the water being quite clear, and under it you could see 2 circular crafts, each one approximately 18 feet in diameter. He said that they were both floating just below the surface of the water, no more than 20 feet from the shore, and not only this, but he could also see 2 beings with the crafts. He said, quote, "The first thing I saw was the UFOs, and it was apparent to me that they were doing something to the craft, and I couldn't really tell what because they were on the bottom side of it and not visible to me except when they would occasionally get over to the side where I could see them." He claimed he watched on as the beings worked on the craft until one of them raised out of the water and disappeared, but not before accelerating to speeds in the neighborhood of 2,500 to 3,000 miles an hour. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Coyne Mansfield incident. The Coyne Mansfield helicopter incident occurred on October 18, 1973, when 4 members of the Ohio Army National Guard were flying in a helicopter over Mansfield, Ohio. Suddenly, they encountered a large metallic disc-shaped object that was hovering in the sky. The object began to move towards the helicopter, causing the crew to take evasive maneuvers. Despite their efforts, the object continued to follow them, eventually passing overhead and disappearing into the distance. The crew reported the incident to their superiors, and an investigation was launched by the military and the Federal Aviation Administration. The incident received significant media attention, and it remains one of the most compelling UFO sightings on record. What makes this incident particularly intriguing is the credibility of the witnesses. The crew were experienced pilots with military training, and their account of the incident was corroborated by radar data and other witnesses on the ground. Despite the extensive investigations, no satisfactory explanation has ever been offered for what they saw that day. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Congress report. For this one, we are talking about a recent report that was delivered to Congress from the Director of National Intelligence. Basically, since August of last year, there has been a total of 510 unidentified aerial phenomena observed in protected airspace or near sensitive facilities. According to the report, 26 of these were described as drones, 163 were labeled as balloons or balloon-like entities, and 6 were described as clutter, whatever that means. This is all fine and well, but the concern sets in when we consider that this leaves 171 sightings unaccounted for, some of which, quote, appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. It's also important to note that the majority of these sightings are coming directly from Navy and Air Force pilots. Here's the thing. What we, as the public know is only a 12-page declassified summary of the actual, real, secret report that was delivered to Congress. Only time will tell if we ever find out what the rest of the report includes or what will happen with further investigation into the 171 sightings, but hopefully if answers do arise one day, we'll find out. In our number 3 spot today, we have the advanced technology. So this UFO sighting comes from a while ago, but it just recently became quite relevant, and that is because some former US Air Force personnel have begun explaining to the Pentagon that they believe back in the 60s there were UFOs that supposedly had the ability to turn off their nuclear warheads. Apparently these officers recently told this to the government's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, who had contacted former Air Force ICBM launch officer Robert Salas to get information about the encounter with an orange flying disc that switched off 10 warheads at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana in 1963. There was another former officer, Dr. Robert Jacobs, who also apparently told the AARO that he had gone as far as to make a film of the UFO for the Air Force in 1964, and that this film captured images of a UFO shooting a test missile out of the sky. With the piquing interest in UFOs and the potential for an advanced civilization apart from our own, it appears as though the government is spending more time now researching and looking into these claims because, well, why would they make them up and then continue on with the same story some 50 years later? In our number 2 spot today, we have the USS Nimitz Tic Tac UFO incident. This UFO sighting comes from 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this crew had been tracking a strange flying object that would start out at around 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate went over in 2 fighter jets, and when they arrived they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, a white oval shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. And when I say quickly, I mean that it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of the fighter jets. So faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what it was, but it certainly was beyond our current capabilities. Finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Roswell incident. This incident is like the mecca when it comes to a government leak. I mean, this incident is infamous for a reason. The whole thing started in 1947 when some sort of crash took place near a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. Shortly after this, the Roswell Army Airfield released a statement saying that they had recovered a flying disc from the ranch, but the Army quickly retracted the statement and said that it wasn't that, but instead it was just a conventional weather balloon. So it was a little sketchy, but most people just let it slide until the 1970s. What happened in the 70s is that a retired lieutenant colonel began to speak out. In an interview with a UFO researcher, he said that the weather balloon story was a cover-up and that alien remains were actually recovered from the crash site. There were both first and second-hand witnesses who claimed that not only were there at least one, but possibly more alien spacecrafts that had crashed at the scene, but also that extraterrestrial remains were recovered by the military, who then began to engage in a cover-up. In 1994, the story changed from a weather balloon to a nuclear test surveillance balloon from Project Mogul, and it was stated that the stories of the alien bodies were probably just test dummies that had been dropped from high altitudes. I'm not gonna lie, the whole thing sounds a little sketchy. I obviously wasn't there, so I can't say for certain what happened, but someone is definitely lying about it. That's what I know. Starting off this list, we have the Pentagon Papers. Perhaps the most famous Pentagon leak in history, former President Lyndon B. Johnson is said to have kept many secrets and lies about the Vietnam War hidden away until a military analyst leaked the records and exposed the truth back in 1971, right in the New York Times. The Pentagon Papers were a very secret Department of Defense study, and the papers, when leaked, told everyone about the extent of America's political and military involvement in the Vietnam War. President Johnson certainly was not the only president named in the papers, as other names included Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, and John F. Kennedy, who is said to have been extremely misleading about the United States' direct involvement in the way. The release of these papers really only fueled people in their protests against the war, and it also was one of the moments where the public lost a lot of trust that they once had in the government. Moving on, we have the Discord leak. I'm sure many of us have heard about the recent Pentagon leak that happened all over a Discord server, and this is just one of the documents that was a part of this leak. A classified US military document suggested that there were 97 Special Forces personnel from NATO countries that were active in Ukraine during February and March of this year. Of course, there is a reason why this information was classified, so while it may seem like a trivial thing to leak, the implications could be severe. The media reported that the document, which was dated March 23, 2023, said that more than half of the 97 Special Forces deployed were from the United Kingdom. Despite this leak, however, Britain's Ministry of Defense explained that these allegations should all be taken just at face value. The document also doesn't state when these personnel were there, if they were still there, or what they were even there to do. So at this point, much is still very unclear, which is probably for the best. Coming up next, we have Project Minaret. This is a document that became declassified in 2013 as a part of the National Security Archives efforts. This historical document describes a sort of watch list of prominent Americans who were critical of the Vietnam War. The document explains that their overseas communications were tapped into and listened to by the government from 1967 to 1973, and a quote from the document reads, "President Johnson wanted to know if the domestic anti-war movement was receiving help from abroad." The project expanded so much that it went on to include more than 1,600 people, including civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Whitney Young, and Muhammad Ali. There were also people like Democratic U.S. Senator Frank Church of Idaho, Republican Senator Howard Baker of Tennessee, New York Times columnist Tom Wicker, and Washington Post humor columnist Art Buchwald. The surveillance began under President Johnson, but it continued on through to the Nixon administration. In the end, the only reason it was stopped was because Attorney General Elliot Richardson was concerned about its very doubtful and murky legality, and decided during the Watergate scandal that it would probably be best to shut it down. I mean, they definitely had enough on their plate already at the time. Coming up next, we have the Afghan War Diary. The Afghan War Diary was a set of classified documents related to the war in Afghanistan that was leaked by WikiLeaks in 2010. The documents, which were mostly military field reports, provided a detailed and often bleak picture of the war effort, including reports of civilian casualties by US and coalition forces. The documents covered the period from 2004 to 2010 and provided a very unique and unfiltered view of the conflict. Some of the most damning revelations included reports of US and coalition forces killing civilians in mistaken or reckless acts, as well as instances of Afghan forces working with the Taliban. The release of the Afghan War Diary sparked controversy and led to calls for greater transparency in US military operations. Some critics argued that the leak put US and coalition forces at risk, while others praised it for providing important information about the war. Coming up next, we have the Shadow Brokers. The Shadow Brokers leaks were a series of classified documents and hacking tools that were allegedly stolen from the US National Security Agency and released by an unknown group calling themselves the Shadow Brokers. These leaks began in 2016 and continued into 2017 and included information about NSA surveillance programs and other very sensitive activities. Some of the tools released by the Shadow Brokers were reportedly used in cyber attacks, including the WannaCry ransomware attack that affected computers in over 150 countries. The leaks caused significant concern among US intelligence officials and raised questions about the vulnerability of the United States cyber infrastructure. While the identity of the Shadow Brokers remains unknown, some experts believe that they may have been a Russian hacking group attempting to undermine US security. The Shadow Brokers leaks were a significant breach of US national security and underscored the growing importance of cybersecurity in modern warfare. Coming up next, next, we have Operation LAC. Operation LAC, which is short for Large Area Coverage, was a Cold War era project that involved the US Army Chemical Corps. Basically, it was a test that was designed to see whether or not it could be possible or feasible to taint a large area by dropping chemical agents from planes. To test this idea, they dropped, quote, a myriad of microscopic particles from planes covering an area that is said to span from the Rockies to the Atlantic, from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. So yes, definitely a large area. In fact, it was so large that this is actually the largest test that the Chemical Corps had ever undertaken. According to the declassified documents relating to this operation, the tests, quote, did not provide the Corps with nearly as much data as the Corps would like. And then it goes on to say that, quote, to obtain additional data, the Corps planned further tests for the next fiscal year. Okay, it's a little daunting. While not necessarily the same operation, also in the Cold War era was a similar test conducted that targeted a neighborhood in St. Louis, Missouri. The test saw the area being sprayed with zinc cadmium sulfide. At the time, those local to the area were being told that, quote, the government was testing a smoke screen that could shield St. Louis from aerial observation in case the Russians attacked. But of course, decades later, documents revealed that the tests were actually a part of a biological weapons program. And to make matters even worse, the zinc cadmium sulfide was linked to an increase in cancer among the residents of the neighborhood. Moving on to our next leak, we have the Serbia leak. According to another recently leaked Pentagon document that is said to have been dated March 2nd of this year, Serbia had agreed to arm Ukraine. The document discusses the European response to Ukraine's request for military training, as well as, quote, lethal aid or weapons, and it shows that they agreed to send over assistance and may have already sent them. The document was labeled no foreign, which means that it was not meant to be distributed to foreign intelligence agencies and militaries, so it's clear that they definitely never expected it to be leaked in a way that the entire world would see. The document also includes information on Serbia declining to provide any training to Ukrainian forces. In response to this leak, however, Serbia's defense minister put aside any reports that they had agreed to supply any arms or that they had already sent them. He actually called the documents, quote, untrue, and said, quote, Serbia did not, nor will it be selling weapons to the Ukrainian nor the Russian side, nor to countries surrounding that conflict. Serbia is definitely in a precarious situation of relying on Russia for energy while also maintaining the desire to join the EU. Coming up next, we have Starfish Prime. This is an operation that took place in 1962, with the documents discussing the outcomes becoming declassified in 1989, and the operation was a joint one between the US Atomic Energy Commission and the Defense Atomic Support Agency. Basically, they detonated a thermonuclear device in the sky above the Pacific Ocean. They launched it from the Johnson Atoll using a Thor rocket, and once at an altitude of about 240 miles, they set it off, which ended up producing a yield of about 1.4 megatons. The documents show that the electromagnetic pulse was so powerful and widespread that it disabled not only most of the equipment that was set up to measure it, but it also took out streetlights and caused telephone outages in Hawaii, nearly 900 miles away. The electrons released caused an aura that could be seen over most of the Pacific Ocean, and according to the documents, the, quote, visible phenomena due to the burst were widespread and quite intense, and apparently it was visible for days. In the end, it is said that the researchers weren't expecting such a powerful blast of electromagnetic pulse, and they also weren't anticipating that the electrons from the blast would get stuck in the Earth's own magnetic field for months, possibly even years, but alas, they did. This went on to create a radiation belt around the planet that eventually went on to disable at least 6 satellites, so that's great. Coming up next, we have the Bin Laden Papers. The Bin Laden Papers were a collection of documents and digital files recovered from the compound in Pakistan where Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden was killed by US forces in 2011. Some of these documents were later leaked to the press, providing insight into the workings of Al-Qaeda and bin Laden's thinking on various issues. The documents included letters between bin Laden and other Al-Qaeda leaders, as well as documents related to the planning and execution execution of attacks. The documents also provided a glimpse into bin Laden's personal life, including his concerns about his health and his relationships with his wives and children. The release of the bin Laden papers provided a valuable intelligence trove for US officials, and it helped to shed light on the inner workings of Al-Qaeda. The papers also underscored the importance of collecting and analyzing intelligence in the fight against extremist groups. Coming up next, we have the embassy missions. This is a secret that was hidden from not only the American people, but also the people that were being spied on and listened to, but it wasn't revealed until 2007 when a document was leaked. This document is one that named 38 different embassies and missions that were so-called targets of US surveillance. The document didn't quite make it clear whether or not these targets were being looked into by only the NSA or if the CIA and FBI were also involved. The document described certain things like bugging fax machines and devices that allowed them to listen in on conversations, and the document also listed the names of different programs that are used within the embassies. The document showed that the embassies targeted weren't just those of countries who seemed to be enemies with the United States, and instead included places like India and Mexico, Greece and Turkey. It appears as if the goal was to gain insider information into the diplomatic relations between the targets and the United States. The EU embassy in Washington, D.C. was one of the targets on this document, and this leak had the potential to have jeopardized one of the largest attempted free trade agreements in the world, because shortly after this all came out, negotiations were set to begin between the EU and the United States. The French president at the time made his anger about the situation very public and stated that all future negotiations will only be made under the agreement that the United States sees all unauthorized surveillance of any EU buildings or personnel.
Kicking off the list at number 10, nuclear site list. Here on Most Amazing, we love lists. I'm not sure if you can tell, but apparently the US government also fancies a list or two. Back when Obama was still running the show, a report was delivered to Congress. Well, it was supposed to be. The 266-page report featured every nook and cranny about the US nuclear program, and it was released publicly on the government printing office's website in draft form by accident. Yeah, just a casual PDF that shows us literal maps to stockpiled fuel used for nuclear warheads back in the day. We love those. The only PDFs I actually enjoy are those ones, actually. Does this stuff happen often? How does this happen? I thought this type of stuff could never happen, right? Well, MIT professor John M. Deutsch said these screw-ups do happen, and it doesn't look like a serious breach. I mean, it certainly sounds serious, but okay, we'll trust the government. Thank you, sir. Let's do it. Number 9, ClimateGate. Yeah, we had a smooth one off the bat, now we're getting right into the serious stuff. Climate stuff. Climate change and stuff. A little different sounding than Watergate, but we'll get to that one later on, obviously. ClimateGate, this was back in 2009 when some hackers released thousands of emails and files, all from the Climate Research Unit in the UK. These documents, okay, hold on to your butts for this one, they show scientists suppressing the publication of research going against global warming. So this sparked a bunch of bad ideas because at that point in 2009, we just believed it. We just stopped listening at all. Climate change critics were like, aha, I knew it. It was all a conspiracy this whole time. The CRU responded and said the emails were out of context and that the planet is indeed heating up, and we're still in fact burning towards our demise. But these docs leaked literally weeks before the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Denmark, so peculiar timing, I'd say. Science fired back pretty quick. Scientists all around the world were actively proving at that point that humans actively are causing global warming. Today we're scrambling a bit more to figure this one out than 2009. Yeah, a few more of you believe this time around. Number 8, God Save the Queen. This one's quite grim, but I have to talk about it. Have you ever wondered what will happen after the Queen passes away? I mean, I know it's the last thing we want to think about right now because dark, obviously, but it's hard not to think of, especially when Politico magazine releases Operation London Bridge to the public. Yeah, what is that? This magazine somehow got documents showing each and every step in detail what'll happen when that fateful day arrives. There'll be phone calls to the Prime Minister, of course, would be first. Customs require that the Prime Minister is informed by the monarch's private security. Flags will fly at half-mast, of course, but oddly enough in this document the Queen's death is referred to as D-Day. Yeah, 9 days of protocols will follow afterwards, and after a service at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, that's when Queen Elizabeth will be buried with King George VI. It's dark, but I mean, imagine reading about this one morning in 2021. What an odd article. What a brutal way to wake up. Number 7, secret PowerPoint. Nothing sounds less cool than a leaked 41-slide PowerPoint presentation, but I'll do my best. Here we go. When it comes to the NSA, odds are this PowerPoint is going to be pretty juicy, right? This slideshow was often used to train US intelligence, and I gotta say, 41 pages? That's it. I did 45 on medieval knights in high school. That's all I'm saying. Step your game up. This program was called PRISM. You probably heard about this. This is a big deal. And it cost about $20 million a year. This was the highlight of the Snowden leak. PRISM kicked off back in 2007. See, originally they partnered with Microsoft, but once they were attached to Apple come 2012, that's when things got a little dicey, as most things are with Apple. The PowerPoint confirmed that the NSA has access to servers belonging to massive tech giants. Google, Skype, YouTube even, so I don't know, search history, you may want to delete that stuff. There was a summit in California which originally was tense. The United States was accusing China of cyber attack, but right after Edward Snowden leaked the PRISM tea, they didn't have much power at said summit. So China and Europe citizens were obviously not too pleased here. Yeah, leaked data, we don't like hearing about that. This one gets a little worse. Number 6, Big Brother is watching. Even allies of the United States are not safe here, okay? Thanks to Snowden, our boy again, gotta mention him a couple times in this list. At the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the states were spying on Germany, France, and Spain. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of eyes, a lot of spies. The NSA had tapped into 35 phones, not just a couple of dudes. They were spying on 35 world leaders, one of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA after finding out and said this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. Ah, brutal. She said the F word too. She's like, hey, we were friends, pal. Don't go through my phone. Don't swipe left in the photos, okay? Betrayal. Well, it was also reported that the NSA was monitoring regular phone calls in Spain for the average folks. So if you thought you were off the hook, you're not, literally and figuratively. They monitored about 60 million calls in 1 month. So yeah, world leader or not, be a little concerned about these guys. Maybe. You know, save some tea for in person. You don't want to give up all that good stuff on the phone. Number 5, leaked voters. Back in December 2015, personal information from 191 million voters was leaked to the public online. Yeah, this feels like yesterday. I remember this all unfolding. I was like, what? How? Researcher Chris Vickery found this data while conducting a security investigation. See, Forbes had described Vickery as, dare I say, a good hacker. They're what's referred to as these white hat hackers. They find weak spots in security without sabotaging or exploiting them, you know? Unlike Snowden or other people. That's the key, that's the Donnie difference. 79% of those eligible to vote were the victims here, so it was a big one. All their names, addresses, birth dates, phone numbers, emails, you name it, things you don't want other people knowing, let alone third parties, were all out there. If you could vote, you were exposed. We're still unsure who was behind this entire leak. CSO Online and databreaches.net suggest that the information more than likely came from software provider Nation Builder, but CEO Jim Gilliam announced that that was not the case and they did not create the database. Although he conceded that it is possible that some of the information that it contains may have come from the data we make available for free to campaigns. He's like, no, we didn't do it, but maybe we did. It's like, okay. So a third party took what they could and really ran with it. That's terrifying. Time to change your email. Again. Number 4, psychoelectronic weapons. Yeah, this sounds like something Iron Man uses. It doesn't sound too chill now, does it? Psychoelectronic weapons. The first time Curtis Waltman heard of these was by accident, as you could have guessed. He was receiving documents via Yahoo and they were not what he expected. See, originally he had filed a Freedom of Information Act request to Washington State Fusion Center. See, he was trying to find out more on the clashes between Antifa and the far right, but he got a response and it was all about experimental weapons. Guy gets a zip file back in return called EM Effects on Human Body. He's like, Big Shiny Tune 6? He's like, what? I didn't ask for this. Way too many viruses in that one. Big Shiny Tune 7, I think, was the good one. That's the good one. In this document, he saw diagrams on these weapons and the effects that they have on people. There's muscle quaking, all body pain. One of the effects allowed users to control their dreams. Is this a weapon? This is pretty remarkable. This was clearly sent by mistake. The only emails I get are student loans, and those ones are not by mistake. Those ones are definitely on purpose. They're like, Mr. Taylor. I'm like, oh God, they found me. Number 3, quantum computer. This next one's pretty eye-opening. Here we go. Computers are getting more and more advanced by the day. Deepfakes are also getting way too good. I've fallen for way too many fake trailers. I thought they were doing a Back to the Future reboot with Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. for like 4 days. All fake. Whole thing's fake. But thanks to our man Snowden, the OG secret revealer, it was reported in the Washington Post on January 2nd, 2014, that the NSA is working hard at creating their own computer. Yeah, how fun must that one be? I wonder if it can run Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 without getting hot. No computer can do that. It's called the quantum computer and it costs about $80 million to create this program. This computer is safely stored in a massive room-sized metal box, not intimidating at all. It's part of a program called Penetrating Hard Targets. So it can break encryptions for just about anything. Finance records, medical, your old MSN, hopefully, maybe, probably, definitely not. What a nightmare that would be. The NSA is well on their way to breaking every form of public encryption. This quantum computer can theoretically break through any RSA encryption, which for the average computer today, that takes years. This supercomputer they're working on can break through a lot faster. You can get through in days, even hours. So you better clear that search history now while you still can. Thanks for the hot tip, Snowden. I was gonna switch to PC gaming, but you know what? I'll wait it out. I'll wait till this new one comes out. It looks a little faster. Number 2, WikiLeaks war logs. Companies have to be somewhere, right? We're in a film studio in Toronto. We go to a certain place. We leave said certain place in a said certain area. Right? Where do places like WikiLeaks live? How do they stay secure? Well, in Stockholm, apparently buried under 100 feet below street level in an old nuclear bunker. That's where. Right next to Pirate Bay. They're neighbors, actually. They knock on the cement walls. Today, it's a facility owned by Swedish internet provider Bahnhof. Now, this is where they keep servers for WikiLeaks, but Julian Assange, frontrunner of this whole operation, his hard drive is in this bunker, behind a 2-foot steel door, accompanied by numerous backup generators, so he's secure. In October 2010, WikiLeaks actually published Army field reports from 2004 to 2009. Now, it's one of the biggest leaks in US history. This report confirmed that there were over 66,000 civilian deaths in the Iraq war logs out of the 109,000 confirmed in total. That's horrible. This leak also suggested that some American troops were classifying civilians as enemies in their statistics afterwards. These numbers were from 2004 to 2009. One of the biggest leaks in US history, no doubt about it. And finally, number 1, Watergate. Yeah, it's not an internet leak, but it's too good to talk about. This is OG, come on. We have to finish on Watergate. In the middle of 1972, there were 5 men who were all arrested for breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. Now, it was pretty obvious they intended on bugging the place. They looked like spy kids. They had all the gears. They were, it was fishy. As the year went on, the election came closer and closer, and then all of a sudden, out of the woodwork comes this anonymous source who fed information to Washington Post reporters that apparently the Watergate bugging incident was a massive campaign of political spying and sabotage kicked off by none other than President Nixon himself. Yeah, he was trying to get that re-election. Now, despite this information leak and it being reported in the news and all that good stuff, Nixon was still re-elected, even though he was involved in this entire scandal. These men were clearly linked to a fundraising group for Nixon, but his administration just kept denying any involvement. It wasn't until a year later, in 1972, when reporters Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, they also came forward and exposed more stuff. Yeah, they exposed the administration's role in this entire scandal, and they had an inside source, an FBI agent named Mark Feltz, and this ultimately led to Nixon resigning later in 1974, the first president to do so.
In our 9th spot, we have Trump's dirty laundry, and I don't mean like literally his stinky socks and undies. In May of 2020, Anonymous came after Trump during his presidency. This happened when Trump threatened to deploy his military force against the protesters. But Anonymous was like, nah, honey, you aren't doing that, and said they had dirt on him. They said that they would publish his dirty laundry. A couple of days later, they published 169 emails that mentioned Trump one way or another. Now, most of the emails weren't even bad, but it was just a scare tactic to show Trump, like, hey, we're not bluffing, okay? We got dirt on you. In our 7th spot, we have the Brazilian government. In June of 2020, Anonymous released personal information on the Brazilian president and his family and cabinet. This caused a lot of chaos. The federal police and the Brazilian Congress began to investigate. In the end, it was revealed that the federal government used $2 million of the public's money to fund advertising on several websites. Most of the websites supported the president, which makes sense as to why they wanted to put money into them. Not only that, but Anonymous leaked a number of government officials' addresses, income, and other personal information. The personal addresses were a very serious issue because it puts them at risk for attacks. Moving on, at number 6, we have CSIS documents. So what I didn't know is that apparently Anonymous has some beef with the Canadian government. One of their first attacks leaked secrets about the foreign activities of the Canadian Secret Intelligence Service, aka the CSIS. It released information about the size of their network, what information they have access to, along with other sensitive government documents. The Canadian government has only admitted to having foreign stations in Washington, London, and Paris. But according to the documents leaked, they have over 25 foreign stations. And I quote, many of which are located in developing countries and/or unstable environments. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the secret federal document. In another attack against Canada, Anonymous leaked top secret documents outlining the redevelopment of Canada's key diplomatic centers in Britain, including selling, relocating, and refurbishing Canada's diplomatic buildings in London.
Now, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's the fact that they got a hold of these top secret documents that's concerning. The documents were marked as confidence of the Queen's Privy Council, which basically means that it's top secret and private documents. Therefore, the government of Canada is looking into its own people to see if someone among them is leaking these documents to Anonymous, or maybe they're a part of Anonymous. In our fourth spot, we have the hashtag #OpsWakeUp21. In January of 2021, Anonymous attacked the government of Malaysia. They defaced 17 government and university websites. This was part of their campaign called hashtag #OpsWakeUp21. Basically, the purpose of this campaign was to highlight the poor security of the government's websites and to warn people about it. In a post, they said, and I quote, "Greetings, we are Anonymous Malaysia. This is message to Government Malaysia. Your security system is low. All data may be leaked. This can cause unwanted hackers selling all your information." Basically, they accused the government for keeping silent and covering up a number of data breaches that occurred over the years. The government knew that personal information of their citizens was being obtained and sold, and they just kinda covered it up until Anonymous exposed them. Coming in at number 3, we have Anonymous Malaysia Part 2. During the Anonymous Malaysia attack, they also revealed that Facebook was selling private information to government agencies. In a post, Anonymous said, and I quote, "If you're a hacktivist willing to, or a man who just wants to protect his freedom of information and join the cause, and kill Facebook for your own privacy. Facebook has sold information to government agencies and gave secret access to information security firms so they can spy on people from around the world. You can't hide from reality where you are. You're neither safe from any government. Someday you'll look back on this and realize what we've done here is right. You'll thank the internet government. We will not harm you, but we will save you." Okay guys, it is time to deactivate Facebook. Nice. Coming in at number 2, we have Epic. In September of 2021, Anonymous leaked data from Epic, which is basically a domain registrar and a web hosting company that has provided service to websites that publish neo-Nazi and extremist content. It's a pretty controversial platform, and Anonymous leaked details of every domain that was ever hosted or registered through them. It also leaked a number of personal information of their customers, like their purchase records, emails, invoices, and credit card information. Over 15 million email addresses were exposed. In fact, they released 3 rounds of data on their website. The first was in February of 2021, the second in September, and the third in October. In October, they actually leaked information on documents belonging to the Texas Republican Party. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the NSA. So thanks to Edward Snowden, we all know that the NSA was spying on Americans through their phone records. Well, Anonymous just exposed the existence of a secret NSA and FBI program called PRISM. This program allows the NSA and FBI to take photos, videos, emails, and chats from the servers of 9 different internet companies, including Microsoft, Facebook, Google, and Apple. Anonymous leaked 13 huge documents about this program, and it revealed that the NSA is not only spying on Americans, but also citizens of over 35 different countries as well. Anonymous said, and I quote, "We bring this to you so that you know just how little rights you have. Your privacy and freedoms are slowly being taken away from you in closed doors meetings, in laws buried in bills, and by people who are supposed to be protecting you."
Starting off this countdown, we have the Vipholm experiments. This was a series of experiments in Sweden from 1945 to 1955. It's literally going to make you sick to your stomach when you find out what they did. Basically, they force-fed people with mental illness sweets to see if sugar was related to tooth decay. Imagine people just cramming food down your throat against your will. It's very gross. These experiments were conducted by the government and sponsored by the sugar industry. The experiments lasted for about 2 years, and by then the teeth of about 50 of the subjects in the experiment had been completely ruined. In our 9th spot, we had the UK Special Demonstration Squad. This is the name of a group of undercover police officers in the UK. Now, the things that they did are going to shock you. For example, they would steal birth certificates and identities of people that had died at a young age. They'd make sure that they would be around their age and then use their identities. The younger the person died, the better, because that means they didn't already live a life that they would have to cover up. And then they would go around with this new identity. Some cases they actually got into relationships with women, but the whole time they did so just to spy on them. In November of 2015, the Metropolitan Police Force apologized to 7 women tricked into relationships by these officers. Like, imagine that, dating someone you're madly in love with, sometimes even having a kid with them, only for them to be like, oh, sorry, gotta go, was only dating you to get intel on you and your friend circle. It's disgusting, and it's actually happened to multiple women. In our 8th spot, we have the radioactive waste. Apparently, there's a huge radioactive dumping zone located in Tonawanda, New York. In fact, they dumped more than 37 million gallons of radioactive waste from their World War II atomic bomb tests. This area has a high rate of cancer and thyroid conditions, and this is the reason why, and no one's talking about it. In our 7th spot, we have the hepatitis tests. In 1956, the US government began running tests on young individuals living at the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island. This was a state-supported institution for children with intellectual disabilities. And what they did to these students was give them hepatitis in order to track the development of the viral infection. Of course, they were being experimented on without knowledge or consent. To make matters worse, the study lasted 14 years. They also injected them with a number of drugs to see what they would do to their body and the hepatitis. Imagine intentionally making a group of people sick for an experiment. The grossest part is that when the government was exposed for this project, they tried to justify their actions by saying that these people were probably gonna wind up contracting it anyways. In our 6th spot today, we have Operation Popeye. This is another very wild one. Operation Popeye was a highly classified weather modification program during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972. You heard me correctly. The government learned how to control the weather. Basically, they wanted to increase rainfall in certain areas to prevent enemies and military supply trucks from being able to travel. In fact, they caused a number of landslides and flooding in that area. Weather manipulation has since been banned from use for military gain. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with HIV. In the 1980s, the HIV epidemic broke out. No one knew how it spread, they just knew that it should be feared, and tons of LGBTQ+ community members were sadly contracting the virus. Well, rumor has it that HIV was a government experiment that was meant to wipe out the undesirables. Of course, the US government has denied this claim, and it's just a conspiracy, we don't know for sure. But based on the other experiments done on minority groups, it's hard to know what to believe. In our 4th spot today, we have Project 112 and Project Shad, or SHAD. Project 112 and Project Shad took place from 1962 to 1973 and involved a number of veterans or military personnel. Basically, both tests involved exposing these people to substances they might want to use in warfare. Nearly 6,000 people were exposed to Coxiella burnetii, which is Q fever, Staphylococcal enterotoxin B, which causes food poisoning, and sarin and soman gas. Sarin is a very, very dangerous nerve gas, and soman can cause death in minutes. Both can be fatal if only the tiniest amount gets on the skin. These men had no clue that they were being exposed to this. Moving on to number 3, we have Project Sunshine. This is another very messed up government project. During the 1950s, the US government was using stillborns to conduct radiation tests on. They wanted to determine the effects that radiation would have on humans and how much we could withstand in case of a nuclear fallout. They called this Project Sunshine, and it was anything but rainbows and sunshine. What's sad is that the government was stealing body parts and tissues from morgues without families' consent. It said that more than 1,500 samples were gathered worldwide. This is incredibly sad and sick. Coming in at number 2, we have the syphilis experiments. In 1932, the US Public Health Service created an experiment to see the health effects of untreated syphilis. But the test subjects were told that they were receiving free treatment to cure their syphilis. And that was a lie. Instead of giving the men the recommended penicillin treatment, they gave them placebos, like aspirin. Sadly, 28 men died of syphilis because of these experiments, 100 more passed away from syphilis-related complications, and 40 spouses contracted this disease. And 19 women who gave birth passed on syphilis to their newborn children. In 1997, Bill Clinton apologized to the survivors and their families on behalf of the government. And he admitted that the tests were, and I quote, profoundly and morally wrong. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the radiation tests. In 1953, a number of tests were done on pregnant women to see the effects that radioactive iodine would have on them and their newborns. These studies were terrible. In one study, researchers gave these women doses of iodine 131. Sadly, they all miscarried. When they did, they continued to study the women's aborted embryos. Another study took place after World War II. 829 pregnant mothers in Tennessee were given vitamin drinks. They were informed that these drinks would improve their health and their babies. But it actually contained radioactive iron, and the researchers wanted to see how fast the radioisotopes crossed into the placenta. Several of the young passed away from these experiments. 4 died from cancers as a result of the experiments, and the women experienced rashes, bruises, anemia, hair and tooth loss, and cancer as well. Meanwhile, they just wanted the best for their babies and thought that this drink was going to help them, not kill them. Starting off this countdown, we have the alien abduction. Back in 1956, an American Air Force Sergeant, Jonathan P. Lovett, and Major William Cunningham went out searching for debris from a recent missile launch in New Mexico. That's when Cunningham heard Lovett let out a huge scream. When he rushed over to help him, he claims he saw Lovett being pulled up by a UFO hovering above him. Lovett was then pulled inside the craft and it took off. Cunningham radioed for help, and when they arrived, they found him in complete shock and he was taken to the hospital. They then started to investigate the incident. According to the military, there was an unidentified object in that area detected on their radar, so Cunningham was telling the truth. Here's where it gets even more messed up though. 3 days later, Lovett's body was found 10 miles away. It was severely mutilated and drained completely of blood. So could it be that he literally was taken away by aliens and then killed by them? What makes this even more suspicious is that the government report on this just vanished into thin air. In our 9th spot, we have the Gorman dogfight UFO. This is said to be one of the most well-known UFO encounters from the 20th century. It's also a fairly credible one. So on October 1st, 1948, US Air Force pilot George Gorman was out flying when he spotted a UFO below him. He described it as a flying disc with round and well-defined edges that was brightly lit and circling slowly over the city. What was weird was that the object was not showing up on radar. So Gorman decided to follow it, but as he got closer to the object, it got brighter and then it shot away from him. He said it went around 250 miles per hour, then increased to 600 miles an hour. Due to its speed, Gorman lost sight of it. Now the government was all like, it's just a weather balloon. Yeah right, I think an experienced aviator would know the difference between a weather balloon and a flying saucer. In our 8th spot, we have the Pentagon. Last year, the Pentagon released footage of what they confirmed to be a UFO. I'm pretty sure by now you have all seen this video, but if you haven't, I'll share it with you today. So the UFO was captured on camera by 2 naval aviators who were shocked at what they saw.
There's a whole fleet of them, look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
So in the videos, you can see what appears to be a UFO flying in the sky. In the video, you can hear just how shocked the pilots are at what they're seeing.
Look at that thing, dude.
In fact, one of the pilots that witnessed this told CNN that the disc moved in ways he couldn't explain. Apparently, 1 second it was there and then next thing you know it disappeared. He said, and I quote, "As I got close to it, it rapidly accelerated to the south and then disappeared in less than 2 seconds. This was extremely abrupt, like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall. It would hit and go the other way." Moving on to number 7, we have the Top Cliff UFO. On September 19th in 1952, half a dozen Royal Air Force officers were taking part of NATO exercises when they encountered a UFO. So the men were headed back in their fighter jet when crew members on the ground saw a weird, silvery, circular object traveling several thousands of feet above the jet. One of the witnesses said, and I quote, "The acceleration was in excess of that of a shooting star. I have never seen such a phenomenon before. The movements of the object were not identifiable with anything I have seen in the air." The craft then started to descend close to the fighter jet. They said it was, and I quote, "swinging in a pendular motion, similar to a falling sycamore leaf." At first, they thought it was a parachute or something that had fallen off of the jet. That was until it stopped midair, began to spin, and then just zoomed away. This sighting was then leaked to the press and was the front cover of the newspapers for quite some time. In fact, this sighting was so insane that Prime Minister Winston Churchill wanted to know more about it and get an investigation going. In our 6th spot, we have the destroyed evidence. On the morning of July 24th, 1948, 2 pilots were flying from Houston to Atlanta with their 20 passengers. That's when all of a sudden they saw a UFO flying clear as day by them. This was witnessed by the 2 pilots and one of the passengers. The others were asleep when this happened. One of the pilots said, and I quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power, shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light." Now they all watched this for about 10 seconds until it disappeared. Obviously, they reported their findings, and this triggered a top secret investigation by the US government. In the end, their findings were destroyed, which means this could be a real UFO sighting, because if it wasn't, they wouldn't have destroyed the evidence. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the White House UFO. Back in the 1940s and 50s, there were a number of UFO sightings in the skies over Washington, D.C. It all started back in 1947 when a search and rescue pilot reported 9 saucer-like discs flying together at over 1,000 miles per hour. Within weeks, the same flying saucer sighting was reported in 40 other states. The strangest incident happened to an air traffic controller in 1952. On July 19th, Edward Nugent, working as an air traffic controller at Washington National Airport, spotted 7 slow-moving objects on his radar. They were located far from any of their flight paths. Now he made a joke being like, "Oh look, they're flying saucers," until he realized that that's probably what they actually were. At that same time, 2 more air traffic controllers saw a strange hovering bright light in the distance. Now they did send out jets to the area, but as soon as they got to the area where the objects were on the radar, they disappeared. Over the next couple of weeks, more and more UFOs were spotted. It got to the point where people were demanding answers. In our 4th spot, we have Britain's Roswell. This is said to be the UK's most famous UFO incident. So in December of 1980 in Rendlesham Forest, England, a number of people reported seeing unexplained lights and then a weird spacecraft land. It all started on December 26 when a security man saw strange lights descend into the forest. As he approached this object, it moved through the trees and the animals at a farm nearby went crazy. The following days, more and more people saw these lights. In fact, a number of credible US Air Force officials were witnesses to this account, including Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. The lieutenant himself confirmed it to be a UFO. In our 3rd spot, we have the 6 soldiers. This next UFO encounter took place in North Korea in 1951 during the Korean War. As the men were preparing to bombard a nearby village, they were all of a sudden greeted by a strange craft. The craft emitted some form of ray that made their airburst start to explode. According to one of the men, and I quote, "Objects would get right into the center of an airburst of artillery and yet remain unharmed." They also said that they were, and I quote, "swept by some form of a ray that was emitted in pulses, in waves that you could visually see only when it was aiming directly at you. That is to say, like a searchlight sweeps around in the segments of light, you would see it coming at you." After this weird attack, the men were left sick and had to be taken to the hospital. Some say that they were attacked by a UFO. Others say they were attacked by a high-tech Soviet death ray. To this day, we still don't know. Moving on to number 2, we have the Mantell UFO incident. Named after Captain Thomas F. Mantell, a Kentucky Air National Guard pilot who sadly lost his life chasing a UFO. So on January 7th, 1948, Godman Army Airfield at Fort Knox received a report of a weird aerial object near Madisonville, Kentucky. They claim it was a floating circular object around 250 to 300 feet in diameter. So the US Air Force sent Thomas to investigate. Sadly, while doing so, he crashed his plane and lost his life. Now, Thomas was a very experienced pilot. He had spent around 2,167 hours in the air, so it's not like him to just crash like that. Other people that saw the UFO claimed it was very white with red borders at the bottom. Some even said, and I quote, just before leaving it came to very near the ground, staying down for about 10 seconds, then climbed at a very fast rate back to its original altitude, 10,000 feet, leveling off and disappearing into the overcast, heading 120 degrees. Its speed was greater than 100 miles per hour in level flight. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Roswell UFO. This is said to be the most famous UFO case in America. So it takes place during the summer of 1947. A rancher named W.W. MacBrazel said he found wreckage on his big plot of land. In fact, during that time, there was a number of UFO sightings, so the rancher thought that the wreckage was from a UFO crash. So he brought the material to the sheriff, who brought it to an officer from the US Army Air Force. Later, the US Army announced that what the rancher found was a flying disc. But the following day, the US Army quickly reversed themselves and they were like, no, it's not a UFO, it's actually just debris from a weather balloon. Years later, in 1994, they admitted that the weather balloon story had been completely bogus. Over the years, hundreds of UFO sightings have been reported in that area. Several eyewitnesses also claimed that they saw alien bodies being taken from a government test site. But the government was like, nah, those are just test dummies. Yeah, we'll go with that. I don't know, there's a number of conspiracy theories surrounding Roswell. It seems like the government might be hiding aliens there. Starting off this countdown, we have Leah Haley. In 1990, a woman named Leah Haley was randomly abducted by aliens. She remembers being on a spacecraft in a round room surrounded by bright lights. When she woke up, she found herself lying on her back on an examination table. Weird alien-type figures surrounded her. Later, she decided to undergo hypnosis to try and remember more information about her abduction. And that's when she realized that the military might have had something to do with this. She also started to remember fellow abductees who she later would meet in real life. When Leah started to say that the military was involved in her abduction, she was actually abducted by members of the US military and interrogated. They apparently told her not to tell anyone or else they would kill her. Then over the years, she was offered jobs randomly by total strangers for positions at nearby military bases. So she believes that she was chosen by the military for a reason. Although the military threatened her in 1992, she published a book titled Lost Was the Key, and it's all about her alien abduction experience. Coming in at number 9, we have Myrna Hansen. In 1980, a mother named Myrna Hansen and her 6-year-old son Sean were headed home from Oklahoma when they approached a pasture. That's when all of a sudden they saw a beam shoot down from the sky and drag cows up into the air. When the UFO realized that Hansen and her son witnessed this, they abducted them. Through hypnosis, she was able to remember being taken to a deep underground military base. In fact, she was able to describe its location in great detail, to the point where members of the Air Force office started following her and her son around. Clearly, they were scared that she was onto them. Moving on to number 8, we have the member of the military. So in 1982, a man whose name was concealed for protection purposes was stationed on a military base in New Brunswick. Let's just call him Steven. So one night, Steven's friend and girlfriend left the base to go watch Tron in theaters. An hour later, they were back already. their car had been smashed. Apparently, they were driving along a stretch of the highway to the movies when they saw a bunch of strange lights coming over a hill. A bunch of cars pulled over to check out the lights, including this dude and his girlfriend. That's when they saw a large disc with flashing lights fly up into the sky. Everyone ran back to get into their car and to drive away. As they were driving away, the craft crashed into the side of some cars, including these guys. A few days later, men in black showed up at the base looking for Steven and his friend. They told them that they better keep their mouths shut and to never tell anyone if they wanted to keep their military careers. Moving on to number 7, we have Robert Richardson. In 1967 in Ohio, Robert Richardson collided with a UFO while driving. However, after impact, the object disappeared without a trace. The only thing they left behind was a small lump of metal from their craft. A week later, he was visited by 2 men in black suits who told him to cough up the piece of metal he collected from the scene of the crash, which was hella sketchy because number 1, how did they know about the accident? And number 2, how did they know that he picked up this piece of metal? Richardson said that he gave the metal to the authorities for testing. The men told him if he was lying, they would kill his wife. Thankfully, he never heard from these men again. In our 6th spot, we have the abductee named Linda. One day, a woman named Linda Napolitano woke up floating mid-air above her bed. She looked around and saw some strange figures by her bed watching her. The next thing she remembers is being on board a craft where these figures were experimenting on her. Some of them looked like aliens, others were humans. Eventually, Linda decided to come forward about her experience and share it with the public. But upon doing so, 2 men kidnapped and interrogated her multiple times. This led her to believe that her abductions were either planned by the government, which makes sense as to why she saw both alien figures and human figures, or the military knows that aliens are real and are trying to learn more about them through the abductees. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Melinda Leslie. Melinda Leslie from Orange County, California, leads a support group for alien abductees. More than 3 dozen of her attendees say that they have been taken aboard an alien spacecraft and then later have been re-abducted by apparent military personnel and then subjected to physical examinations and interrogations. She herself has been a victim of this. She remembers humans in a flying triangle abducting her and taking her to an underground testing facility. There, a number of men in hazmat suits ran extensive tests on her. Eventually, she was abducted a 2nd time, this time by a red-haired military captain who told her to tell him everything she knew about aliens. Coming in at number 4, we have the Roswell UFO. Roswell, New Mexico is famous for their UFO sightings. This is the hotspot for aliens, apparently. Or maybe it's because the military has a secret underground alien base there. Well, in 1947, a rancher named W.W. Mac Brazel said he found wreckage on his big plot of land. In fact, during that time, there were a number of UFO sightings, so the rancher thought that the wreckage was from a UFO crash. So he brought that material to the sheriff, who brought it to an officer from the US Army Air Force. Later, the US Army announced that what the rancher found was a flying disc. But the following day, the US military quickly backtracked. And they were like, no, it's not a UFO. It's actually just, debris from a weather balloon. Then, years later in 1994, they admitted that the weather balloon story was completely bogus. Now, this isn't exactly an alien abduction story, but it's a real story of the military caught lying and covering up their tracks. Moving on to number 3, we have the cornfield. This next story comes from a man who grew up on a cornfield. Their name was never released due to privacy reasons, but for our sake, let's just call him Bob. So one night, Bob saw something fly down from the sky and hover right above their farm. It was shaped like a rectangle and it was glowing light. Then it left as fast as it came. The next day, Bob and his family were greeted by 2 men in black suits with dark sunglasses. They said they needed to inspect the farm because there was a supposed natural gas leak. It was very strange because mostly everything on the farm was run by solar energy. Alas, the men were from the government, so Bob was like, okay, your authority, you know best, knock your socks off. The men then went out to the area where the UFO had been the night prior. Now, Bob did tell the men what he had seen. The two men said that if he ever repeated that, he was going to be arrested for endangering people. Like, what is going on, and why is the military so sus? In our second spot, we have the test subject. Ever since Caitlin was younger, she remembers being abducted by aliens. At first, she thought she just had a wild imagination as a kid or was a vivid dreamer. That was until she was abducted again when she was an adult. She remembers being taken from her bed by weird men, and then waking up on an examination table surrounded by bright lights. She could not move or scream. She knew she had been drugged. The next thing she remembers is feeling something really hot on her face. The men around her were doing something to her face. Months later, she decided to share her story with the world. And immediately upon doing so, she was visited by two strange men who told her she better tell the press everything she was saying was made up, or else she would pay the consequences. Fearing for her life, Caitlin refused to talk about her story to anyone ever again, and declined any follow-up interviews. And in our number one spot today, we have Kendall Folk. Kendall is another woman who has been abducted a number of times throughout her life. At first, she thought these abductions were by real aliens. Later, she was able to debunk her own abductions and realize the truth. Kendall believes that she was targeted by the military due to her mental health issues. This makes her an easy target in their eyes because, sadly, people will find it harder to validate her claims. She remembers during one abduction, she was taken from her home in a UFO craft. Later, she was able to remember that it was a car that pulled into her driveway, not a UFO. She remembers standing in her driveway and seeing this alien get out of the car and come towards her. Now she remembers how weird this alien was. It walked very robotic. And she believes that that's because it was in fact a robot. The military used this so that Kendall would think it was a real alien abduction. They later her and brought her back to a facility where tests were done on her. This is absolutely wild. Is it true? Is the military faking alien abductions just to run tests on us? This is mind-blowing.
Number 10, moon landing plans. We are trying to go to the moon again, but that might not happen for a while. Revised schedules in a leaked document showed that the agency is preparing for more inevitable delays, distinguishing between baseline dates and the schedule as it stands, a canned schedule that would prioritize regular launches, and a content program that would only launch when each component of each mission is ready. Under the content schedule, the Artemis 3 mission wouldn't launch until 2026, with a rover making its way to the lunar surface not before 2032, as opposed to the currently projected 2030. But there's one problem with launching the Gateway. The rocket configuration of the agency's Space Launch System, SLS, called Block 1B, is far from ready. In fact, just the tower it's building for the launch of this SLS iteration is already way over budget and behind schedule, just like the entire SLS program. Then there's SpaceX's Starship, also under contract with NASA to send astronauts to the lunar surface, which appears larger and more capable than the Gateway. Now, NASA is clearly still trying to establish the schedule of returning the first NASA astronauts to the moon since the early 1970s, and the dates are slipping fast. Number 9. Leaked video. A leaked Navy video captured in July 2019 showed a sphere-shaped unidentified object flying over water near San Diego. The footage, obtained by a documentary filmmaker and shared with NBC News, appeared to show the mysterious object flying for a few minutes before disappearing into the water. The video was captured by a Navy aircraft and recorded in the USS Amza Combat Information Center, according to the filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. The clip appears to show a spherical object flying above the water for a few minutes near San Diego before it vanishes. It splashed, military personnel can be heard saying in the video. The Defense Department confirmed the clip was recorded by Navy personnel and said it would be reviewed by the Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, a panel established to gain insight into the nature and origins of such objects. Number 8. Multiple objects in the sky. Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot who testified that he witnessed unidentified aerial phenomenon UAP with his own eyes, called on on President Joe Biden to investigate the mysterious object spotted in American airspace. Ryan, a former fighter pilot, explained that after 2014, when upgrades were made to our radar system, our squadron made a startling discovery. There were unknown objects in our airspace. And these were not just mere balloons like the Chinese spy balloon that dominated the country's attention in February. These were no mere balloons, they could hold their position, appearing motionless, despite Category 4 hurricane force winds of 120 knots. They did not have any visible means of lift or control surfaces, in other words, nothing that resembled normal aircraft with wings, flaps, or engines. These are not isolated incidents, Ryan said. We have a real UFO problem, and it's not balloons. The point is that we don't have a clear understanding of what's above our heads as we thought we did. There are uncertainties up there that we have to deal with, and if we don't do it, our adversaries are going to take advantage of that uncertainty, that weakness, to spy on us with various means, as we've seen. It's pretty clear if there are things over our head that we're not sure what they are, well, we need to figure it out. If they're adversarial, it's a national security issue, we have the mechanisms for that. If it's not a security issue and it's not an adversarial platform, then it's a matter of scientific inquiry. Now, it's crazy that he was even allowed to speak on this, and to be honest, it kinda makes me scared. Number 7. ADAR. The Pentagon's new Office for Investigating Potential UFO Sightings received hundreds of new reports in 2022, and while it can explain more than half of those events, a sizable chunk remains a mystery. Within the new batch of sightings, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence say they're focusing on some 171 cases, including some in which objects appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities and require further analysis. Since it was formed last summer, the ADAR office has received 366 reports of unidentified aerial phenomena. That total reflects 247 new UAP reports and another 119 that occurred before March 2021, but hadn't been included in an earlier report. The new numbers indicate a step in a rise of UAP sightings. The report released in June 2021 listed just 144 reports, covering a 17-year period. With the subsequent additions, 510 UAP reports were in their files at the end of August 2022. Officials say they believe the rise in UAP reports is due to US government efforts to destigmatize the topic of UAP and instead recognize the potential risk the phenomenon poses, both as an aviation hazard and potential adversarial activity such as foreign surveillance efforts. Number 6. Secret Space Station. Back when the NASA space program was all over the news in the 60s, the USAF was simultaneously working on a more covert program. The Manned Orbiting Laboratory was a top-secret United States Air Force initiative, with the main objective being to serve as a manned satellite to spy against the Soviet Union. The shuttle never officially launched and the program was shut down in 1969. However, thanks to declassified documents, we can see how the government intended to keep a watchful eye over the Soviet Union. Number 5. Trump's tweet. Okay, this is kind of funny, but let me explain. There are thousands of satellites in Earth's orbit right now, and hundreds are operated by the United States military. While the public has known of their presence for years, the actual capabilities of our spy satellites were unknown until former President Donald Trump tweeted a classified image in September 2019. From the image of the exploded rocket launched in Iran, experts were quick to identify the satellite as one of the United States' KH-11 reconnaissance satellites, which for obvious reasons, there is not a lot of known information about it. Now, this man literally posted a classified image on his Twitter, and people still think he didn't hide documents in his bathroom. Yeah, okay. Number 4. Space threats. A document leak from a Discord chat room by Jack Texiera, a member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard, spoke about space threats. The leak comes as the US Space Force enters its 3rd year of operation, and as senior Pentagon leaders sound the alarm over increased threats coming from space. Space Force General Chance Saltzman, the chief of space operations, said the Pentagon is assessing an incredibly sophisticated array of threats that include jamming of communications and GPS satellites, spacecrafts that can grapple other satellites, lasers that can dazzle them, cyber attacks, and even nesting dolls or satellites that release others that spread out and track adversaries' spacecraft. The leaked document showed Russia has also experimented with its Tobel electronic warfare system in an attempt to disrupt SpaceX Starlink satellite system. In its annual space threat assessment report, the Center for Strategic and International Studies found that China continues to make progress towards the goal of becoming the world leader in space. Over the past year, China has continued to grow its space and counter space assets, maintaining its status as the second most capable space nation after the United States. China has also developed a space station in low Earth orbit, landed a spacecraft on the far side of the moon, and a rover on Mars. It also plans to put astronauts on the moon and is targeting the lunar South Pole, where NASA's Artemis program also intends to send astronauts. China by far has the most dynamic space program of the two US rivals, US officials say. One of the leaked documents say China's overall military strategy to establish and maintain information dominance in conflict drives Beijing's development of space and counter-space doctrine, capabilities, and TTP or tactics, techniques, and procedures. Number 3. Navy pilots talk about UFO. Recently, 2 former Navy pilots were interviewed by 60 Minutes on CBS News about a UFO sighting over the Pacific Ocean in 2004. Commander Dave Frander and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich spotted the unidentified object during a training exercise but were unable to classify it. Dave described it as a little white tic-tac looking object, adding that it lacked conventional exhaust plumes and had no wings or visible markings. It also moved erratically, the pilot said. In an interview with NBC News, Dave described the 2004 encounter, calling the object the strangest, most obscure thing I've ever seen flying. As soon as we look down, we see the white water, and then we see this little white tic-tac. It's pointing north-south, and it's just going forward, back, left, right, he said, adding that it was bouncing around like a ping-pong ball. Dave said he approached the mysterious object to take a closer look, and it began mirroring his movements. Then when the pilot got within a half a mile of the UFO, it suddenly vanished. Again, I'm shocked that they were even allowed to speak about this at all. Number 2. Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was the code name for the systematic study of unidentified flying objects by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to its termination on December 17, 1969. The project, headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio, was initially directed by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt. Project Blue Book had 2 goals: to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security and to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. Thousands of UFO reports were collected, analyzed, and filed. As a result of the Condon Report, which concluded the study of UFOs was unlikely to yield major scientific discoveries, and a review of the report by the National Academy of Sciences, Project Blue Book was terminated in 1969. The Air Force supplies the following summary of its investigations. No UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of a threat to our national security. There was no evidence submitted or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge, and there was no evidence indicating that the sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. By the time Project Blue Book ended, it had collected 12,618 UFO reports and concluded that most of them were misidentifications of natural phenomena, clouds, stars, etc., or conventional aircraft, which is kinda lame. And coming in at number 1 is Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Among some of the Pentagon's most secretive programs is the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The program was dedicated to investigate reports of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, but for years it was never formally acknowledged by the Department of Defense. The program was first made public on December 16, 2017. The program began in 2007 with funding of $22 million over 5 years until it ended in 2012. The program began in the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, and according to the Department of Defense, the AATIP ended in 2012 after 5 years. However, reporting suggests that the U.S. government programs to investigate UFOs continued. The agency claims they stopped receiving funds in 2012, however, many believe it continues to operate to this day.
Number 10. Contractor. A former NASA contractor went on video to reveal the fact that NASA has been keeping secrets from us. She says she both viewed and heard evidence that 3 NASA astronauts said that they had seen unidentified flying objects objects land on the moon, but that these events were later covered up in an operation that was codenamed Santa Claus, a fitting name as NASA wants you to believe that UFOs are just about as real as Santa. She says that she had clearance to enter Building 8 at NASA's Johnson Space Center back in the 1970s. She says that she received information over lunch from officials that if anyone was ever caught exposing aliens as real, they would lose their pensions, and apparently one person in the past had not only lost their pension, but had disappeared off the face of the earth. In the video, she said, "They didn't threaten to kill me, but I got the message I shouldn't talk about it." She apparently witnessed everything from employees being forced to burn photographic evidence and seeing official pictures being airbrushed to hide UFOs. Number 9. The Kecksburg File. On the night of December 9th, 1965, a giant fireball which caused a sonic boom streaked across the sky before crashing into the woods in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Military immediately arrived and sealed off the area, hauling off a massive object the size of a bus to their Air Force base nearby in Ohio. The Pentagon immediately tried to cover it up, saying it was a meteorite, releasing no details about the incident. But in 2003, NASA went on to say that it was not a satellite, but 2 years later in 2005 they said, yeah, actually it was a satellite, just don't worry about it. The cover-up seemed never ending, and it just led more and more people to become interested in finding out the truth of the Kecksburg file. A Freedom of Information Act was then started to get the file looked into again, and the judge threw away NASA's attempts to have the lawsuit thrown out. So in 2007 they announced they would be reopening the Kecksburg file, but they claimed that a majority of the files had been destroyed or lost, and they never released what it actually was that crashed that day. Number 8. Astronaut. Like I said in the first point, there is allegedly a conspiracy within NASA to cover up any of their employees or former employees talking about the fact that they have had alien experiences. But as I have mentioned in other parts of this list, there are actually a handful of astronauts who have spoken out about potentially alien encounters. Leland Melvin is probably best known for taking his astronaut photos with his rescued dogs, but what you're probably not familiar with is the fact that he has shared his alien experiences on Twitter. He received a question on Twitter that read, "What's your outlook about the existence of intelligent alien life living in our solar system? Have you ever witnessed a UFO?" And Leland went on to respond with, "I have not seen one in space or on the ground, but thought I saw something organic/alien-like floating out of the payload bay. Randy Bresnick and I called the ground to ask what it could be, and they said it was ice that had broken off of the Freon hoses. Translucent, curved, organic looking, with an alien emoji at the end. Of course, he explains it by saying it was just ice, but that was probably just NASA feeding them an easy cover-up. Number 7. Moon crash. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is similar to the Mars Orbiter that I have talked about before. It basically watches over the moon and takes pictures of its surface. Earlier this year, they released a photo that had many people scratching their heads and insisting that NASA was doing yet another cover-up. The photo shows the surface of the moon with what is called a double impact crater. While the moon is covered in tons of craters, this one is unique for this reason. The evidence of the dozens of feet wide indentation seems to show that some sort of man-made spaceship crashed into the moon and left the divot. Many people on social media believe this to be evidence that some sort of alien craft had hit the moon, but NASA tried to shut everyone up by claiming it was just an out-of-control rocket. While they seem to know it was a rocket, they admitted that they don't have any idea where it came from or what its original path was intended to be. So even if it's not aliens, it's still pretty confusing. Number 6. Alien photo. Mars is one of the main planets that many people believe could be host to aliens, hence the term Martians and all the fictitious media that includes alien creatures visiting from Mars. On February 4th of this year, one person online dug up a photo that the Perseverance rover had taken on Mars back in 2021. The title of the blog post being, "Alien Figure Watching Mars Rover, 100% Proof of Life UFO Sighting News." The image seems to show a dark figure laying on a large Martian rock. It's distinctly human-shaped and darkly colored and stands out from anything else in the area or what we've seen in previous pictures. The man explains in his blog post everything that he believes it to be. There is a person laying down watching the NASA Mars rover from a safe distance away. The person is about 1 foot tall, 0.3 meters, and is lying down. Pinkish upper chest, neck and face, reddish hair, wearing a dark suit, but has a gray object over one shoulder. Looks like a backpack of some sort. There There are even footprints behind the person leading up to the location they chose to lay down at. If you don't agree with that, then what do you think it could be? Number 5. Mercury UFO. Project Mercury was NASA's first ambitious space mission, which took place back in the early 1960s, which included 6 manned space flights. But that isn't what we're going to be focusing on. One of the Mercury probes sent out into space took a picture of what appears to clearly be a UFO. A photo that a NASA blogger found in an old disk from the mission that took place in December 1960 appears to show a strange shape that looks like it could be an alien spacecraft. While many arguments against UFOs are that they're just random space junk, this was at the beginning of NASA's steps out into space, so there really couldn't have been that many rocket pieces and broken panels floating around. The blogger says that he believes this is aliens wanting to watch one of humanity's biggest steps, not worrying about being seen because this particular craft didn't actually have any humans on it. Number 4. Deleted UFO. This same blogger also recently found evidence of NASA purposefully covering up and deleting archival photos that appear to show evidence of aliens. He found a photo of what appears to be a large, dark, rectangular alien ship flying past the sun, and he also found that NASA is trying to hide it. On his blog, he said, "I found a huge rectangle UFO shooting past our sun, and it's got to be several miles across or more. I tried to find it on another NASA site, but I got an error message. Then I tried using official European Space Administration software, and again, error message. Then I went into the individual photos online and input my own URL, but these photo times do not exist. That's 3 different sources all erased from existence. I found it at a 4th source." He says that he won't reveal this other source as he doesn't want it taken down as well. There are 20 different photos in a row that all show the unidentified craft, and he calls NASA out for never saying anything about it. Number 3. Mars photos. I talked about this on a separate list, but I also wanted to touch on it here too. We've taken a look at one Mars rover photo already, but I want to dive into just how many of these there are. People are constantly picking out unexplained and potentially alien things popping up in these photos of the red planet. One of the most baffling recent images is this one that appears to show some sort of carved out entryway which people believe must lead to some sort of alien hideout on the planet, looking too precise to have been caused by natural weather and environment conditions like NASA claims. There have also been many rocks that appear to be much more than just rocks, as they stand out from anything else in the photos, almost looking like a sort of coral growing out from the ground through the dust. There are a lot of them, and NASA has attempted to explain away all these photos, but there is still just a lot of mystery there. Number 2. The Calvine photo. This one is similar to the Kecksburg file in the way that it is also a UFO encounter from many decades ago that NASA tried to hide away by claiming it was lost. The photo was taken in August 1990 by 2 hikers near Calvine in Scotland. It shows what is clearly a large diamond-shaped vessel flying through the sky, being trailed by another airplane. They took pictures and said it appeared to be about 30 meters long. It apparently then shot straight up into the sky and disappeared, never to be seen again. The photo was first given to the newspaper and then handed over to the Ministry of Defense, and then it was never discussed again, and the photo apparently went missing. In October of 2021, the Scottish Operations Records book was checked, and there was no account of anything having been spotted in the sky on that day. One determined individual, however, managed to track down the lost photo, and about it they said, "The Calvine photograph stands as one of the biggest mysteries in UFO history. Finally revealed after 32 years, it shows that answers only bring new questions." Number 1. Space nudes. In May of this year, it was revealed to the public that NASA was going to be sending a message out to aliens, calling it the Beacon in the Galaxy. It's a binary coded message that includes details about our planet and human life that is going to be shot into space for anybody to find. One of these images was revealed to be an image of what a genetically male and female human look like, and yes, it has all the details. It also includes a diagram of gravity so aliens know which part of us is the top and which is the bottom. Other images included are the solar system diagram, a map of Earth's landmass, and depictions of things like mountains and trees. So yes, NASA is actually sending our nudes out to space. The fact that they are doing this shows that at least a small part of the organization believes that aliens are out there to receive this message. Number 10. UAP report. Alien Alien fans and skeptics alike were pretty shocked when just a few months ago the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, said that they believed in aliens. Well, actually, they said they were going to be investigating unidentified flying objects, but close enough. While some people did believe that this was NASA saying, hey, we believe in aliens, it was actually them announcing they were going to launch a study into UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, because I guess they're just too good to say UFO. The scientist coordinating the study said, over the decades, NASA has answered the call to tackle some of the most perplexing mysteries we know of, and this is no different. In the report, they said that a good chunk of confirmed unidentified objects seem to show evidence that they were made using advanced technology that humans just don't have yet. Number 9. Injuries. A Freedom of Information Act request caused 1,500 pages of UFO reports and evidence to be declassified and leaked to the public. And what the pages contained was pretty shocking for those who read it. A percentage of the pages included information of how people who reported seeing UFOs and aliens had been legitimately physically affected. Real physical evidence that something unexplained had happened to them. Some of the reports included things like burns, which could have been caused by the jets of a UFO, or potential face-to-face alien interference. Bafflingly, they also confirmed that women who had come into contact with aliens shortly fell mysteriously pregnant after the event, with no explanation as to why they were suddenly with child. Yes, we all know by now how mommy and daddy make babies, but that apparently wasn't a factor in these cases. Alien babies potentially on the way. Number 8. FLIR. Alongside these 1,500 documents, 3 separate videos were released that appeared to show UFOs being spotted by the United States military, so let's take a look. The first is titled FLIR and was originally filmed back in 2004 when the USS Nimitz was flying off the coast of Southern California. There had apparently already been an unidentified aircraft in the area for up to a week before the video was filmed. Off the coast, they spotted a large oval-shaped object, estimating it to be about 40 feet long and white in color. 4 people on the craft saw the object for a running total of about 5 minutes, although the video is only just over a minute. They were able to track it using their advanced infrared camera, and due to the object's shape, they nicknamed it the Tic Tac. All these videos to this day have no real explanation for what the UFOs actually were. Number 7. Gimbal. Next up on the list we have the video titled Gimbal, which was leaked alongside the last one I just talked about. This one's different because we can hear the people in the jet reacting to what they're seeing. They use a similar infrared camera and follow the object that was flying over the East Coast. At first, they comment that it might be some kind of drone, but then note that it is fighting against incredibly strong winds and appearing to not be affected by it at all. They even comment that there are other unidentified crafts in the area, but we don't actually see them as it's locked onto the target. What's interesting about this one, as the people in the video point out, is that it moves in an incredibly strange fashion, appearing to rotate and move around despite the heavy winds it's apparently fighting against. My favorite part of this is that there's one guy calmly stating facts about it while the other cusses and yells in excitement. Is that a f***ing drone, dude? Number 6. Go fast. The third and final leaked video is probably the best of the bunch, as the video starts before they have managed to lock onto the target and you can see it moving. The video is pretty correctly titled Go Fast because this thing is moving incredibly fast, like definitely faster than anything else that could have been an easy explanation. It's zipping over the top of the water as they try to get their camera to lock onto it, and when they finally do, they start cheering because of just how difficult it was due to how fast the object was moving. Their comments are a mix of excitement and confusion in regards to what they've managed to find, saying, "Look at that thing fly," while also going, "What the f*** is that thing?" People often like to write off UFOs as some sort of secret military practice vessels or training project, so what can it be when the military itself doesn't know what they saw? Number 5. Pentagon Report. In May of this year, the Pentagon appeared on a panel where they discussed UFOs, and they revealed just how much information they have about the situation. They said that there are around 400 separate reports of unidentified flying objects coming from military personnel. So while we do have the 3 leaked videos, there are likely even more locked up in a safe somewhere that offer convincing evidence of the existence of aliens. The Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence said, "We've seen an increasing number of unauthorized and/or unidentified aircraft or objects, and military control training areas and training ranges and other designated airspace. Reports of sightings are frequent and continuous." Well, it definitely sounds like he's trying to sweep it under the rug as someone just like flying a drone illegally onto a military base or something. I think it's safe to say the military have the resources to know if it were something as simple as that. So their confusion and uncertainty makes it seem more and more like aliens are among us. Number 4. Live stream. In 2016, an incident occurred during NASA's live feed from a camera mounted on the International Space Station that pointed towards the Earth. You can see the Earth's curve, and one viewer noticed that for a short moment, a massive bright object can be seen falling towards the planet. But as quickly as it comes, it's gone as the live feed conveniently cuts out and experiences technical difficulties. The video was posted to YouTube, and people immediately started theorizing that NASA had intentionally cut the live feed at this moment to cover up the fact that this bright shape was a UFO, or at least something alien in origin. Many people noted how suspicious this was and started calling out NASA for their actions, while other people were saying that it was just a meteor or some hunk of space junk. A spokesperson for NASA said that the cameras are controlled automatically, and it had simply passed out of range, causing the video to be cut off. But that's just what they want you to think. Number 3. Alien junk. An astrophysicist from Harvard wrote a book that was titled Extraterrestrial: The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, and it was about how he believed that an object that passed through the solar system in 2017 was actually a piece of alien technology, bringing forward the theory that NASA is actually just ignoring real evidence of alien existence because they're just brushing it off as some random space junk. Whether they believe it really is space junk or they're just trying to make us think that that's what it is. The object was long and not shaped like any known comet we've ever seen before. It also apparently accelerated away from the sun, and he believes it ended up in our solar system accidentally thanks to aliens, saying, "A buoy, a grid of pods for communication, other intelligent living organisms, defunct technology, or discarded technological trash. These are all plausible explanations." Number 2. Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin was one of a handful of astronauts who were aboard the Apollo 11, the first spaceflight that put humans on the moon with one small step for man. During their journey, however, they saw more than just the moon. Apparently, they may have seen a UFO. They reported seeing large objects that appeared to follow alongside them. It was confirmed not to be the upper stage of the rocket that would have been detached, as this was 6,000 miles away from them at the time. The event was kept under wraps, and nobody talked about it until it was brought up years later, sweeping it under the rug as simply a panel that had disconnected from the ship. But again, that's just what they want you to think. The claims coming from a senior NASA scientist who said he had just called up Buzz on the phone and he had agreed. Did you really talk to him on the phone, senior NASA scientist? Did you really? Number 1. ISS report. Alright, this one's not actually NASA because it actually comes from a Russian astronaut aboard the International Space Station, and I'm just gonna count it because it's a pretty cool video. He was on board the ISS using his camera to record the southern lights, which are the same as the northern lights but in the south. It's a time-lapse recording, and for a brief moment you can see a line of large bright lights moving across the sky. In the tweet the astronaut posted, he referred to them as space guests, saying that while it was was only a few seconds in the time lapse, it was actually around 52 seconds in real time. Some people suggest that it may have been some kind of meteor or satellite, but I'm actually a licensed professional and I say that it was aliens.
Kicking off the list at number 10, ancient Sumerians. The Mesopotamian civilization was formed in what's now Iraq and Kuwait. Now these civilizations began around the Neolithic Revolution, so around 12,000 BCE, give or take. Now sometimes it's referred to as the cradle of civilization because Mesopotamia was one of the first places to develop agriculture, being right in the middle of Egyptian and Indus Valley civilizations. So of course there are these ancient Sumerian tablets, and in these tablets we start to question our own history. In 1842, British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard discovered ruins of this great royal archive, just thousands of tablets made of clay. Pretty much the world's oldest overdue library books, just so dusty. These tablets showed Sumerians engaging in a social night. This scene here depicts a banquet from around 2600 BC. That was actually the world's first bender, believe it or not, fun fact. Ancient gods of Mesopotamia were said to have wings and the ability to control all of humanity. These gods were the Anunnaki, and some believe they were 8 feet tall, and they were also aliens from another planet. The Sumerians wrote one of the oldest tales in human history. They wrote the Epic of Gilgamesh, so maybe these alien gods inspired them, perhaps. I don't know. I'd probably write a book if 8-foot-tall winged gods landed in my crops. I'd probably write 2 books, in fact. Number 9, Sumer. The National Museum of Iraq is home to many ancient artifacts, and it has the Nimrod gold collection, just this fancy jewelry from the 9th century. It also has Uruk tablets from 3000 BCE, and these ancient jars with mysterious designs, one of which was this. This piece was made around 4000 BC, and it shows a creature that resembles a human, or an alien. It's basically got big eyes, lanky arms, a long body, a long neck. Is this me? Am I a time traveler? What's going on here? Many believe that this is evidence of early visitors. Even an Iraqi minister claimed that ancient Sumerians would visit Pluto in advanced spacecraft 1,000 years back. Their transport minister told reporters that the world's first ancient alien airport was built there in 5000 BC. That's a hard fact. The civilization of Sumer, according to Kazim Finjan, was an alien airport. Nice, sounds good. Be there soon. Quick pit stop at Uranus. Lol. Number 8, the Madonna with Saint Giovanni. For this next one, we'll be taking a look at a painting from the 15th century, #art. By artist Domenico Ghirlandaio, this painting is currently in the Hall of Hercules in Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. The painting shows the Virgin Mary, the infant Jesus, and St. John the Baptist. Now the baby Jesus was lying on the woman's garments, and over her right shoulder we can see this object floating in the sky. And what's even more interesting is that a man is looking up at said object, and he's even covering his eyes from the sun to get a better look. Also, this dog is barking at this object in the sky, so something is afoot. Art historians believe the flying saucer is an angel resembling a cloud, while others believe it's a clear sign of alien visitors. What do you guys think? Was this the 15th century version of drawing the sun at the top corner of your painting, or did this mystery artist document UFO footage with his own brush? Sound off in the comments below. Number 7, the Pyramids of Egypt. Built over 4,500 years ago, the Pyramids of Giza are these massive tombs where ancient pharaohs and queens were laid to rest. Around 15 million visitors get an up-close look at these beautiful structures once a year, and for a long time, we've speculated just how these incredible things were built. Well, Tesla CEO Elon Musk put forth his hot take on the matter, and he claims the landmark was built by aliens. The guy's pretty much an alien himself. A guy who launches cars into space for fun also believes in aliens. July 31st, 2020, Elon simply tweeted, "Aliens built the pyramids, obvi." Now, since that tweet, Egypt's International Cooperation Minister has called out Elon, asking for him and the rest of SpaceX to check out the tombs of the pyramid builders. Until the early 20th century, the pyramid built for the pharaoh Khufu was the largest building on the planet. Laborers had to move 6.5 million tons of stone with only wood and rope. The 3 largest pyramids of Giza have a deep connection as well to the cosmos. The stars of the constellation Orion were once associated with Osiris, the ancient Egyptian god of rebirth and afterlife. Another huge theory is that an advanced race of aliens came to Earth with all this future technology, and that's how they were able to build these pyramids. Which I gotta say, I kind of believe that more. That's pretty, I can't even lift a box without pulling my back out, let alone a pyramid. Number 6, Antikythera mechanism. After being submerged for over 2,000 years, we believe we found the oldest known analog computer. In 1901, near the Greek island Antikythera, divers found a Roman shipwreck full of treasure, jewelry, statues, and an ancient planetary alignment device. In 1959, Derek de Soya Price discovered its true purpose. Now, for many years, nobody really knew what this thing was. Obviously, it looks like rusted junk. It was to keep track of the planets and the moon. They didn't have a horoscope app back then to look at while they're on the bus. They had to align this mechanism with the month of the year. Now, one of the gears was specifically designed to keep track of when the next Olympics are, which is pretty hilarious. You can never be too early, I guess. Of course, there's theories that aliens left this piece of technology behind because of how advanced it is, and that would make sense. They came to Earth to watch the Olympics, watch some guy huck a javelin, some deep space entertainment. I back this theory, let's do it. Number 5, the Nazca line. We've all heard of alien crop circles at one point or another. I mean, I myself remember watching the movie Signs when I was younger and I couldn't sleep for like 13 years. I don't know. So this next one obviously freaked me out. Just 200 miles southeast of Peru, we can find hundreds of markings etched into the earth. They're massive pieces of art, like crop circles, but more intimidating, one would say. The biggest ground graffiti spans over 1,200 feet, and many believe this was an ancient ritual for water. Given its location, that theory certainly checks out. Another theory, written in 1968 in Eric von Daniken's book Chariot of the Gods, suggests that ancient Nazca was a site for alien visitors, which is why we're here now. Leaving behind knowledge in the form of these massive doodles, as well as technology like we talked about earlier. Number 4, Sacsayhuaman. Located in Peruvian Andes, this fortress was built by the Inca way back in the 15th century, just outside of the Inca capital of Cusco. It was made out of these massive, giant rocks, but the intriguing part is just how these rocks connect with one another. They looked perfectly chiseled to fit, almost like it was broken and then pieced back together. These 1,000-year-old walls are made of incredibly heavy stone, over 350 tons each, and they weren't just rolled down a hill or two, they had to be moved more than 20 miles to make up this fortress. We've recently discovered that ropes and pulley systems were used, they were definitely a part in this, but we also have to mention the elongated skulls that were found in the 1920s by archaeologist Giulio Citella. Were these skulls formed using binding techniques, or is this an alien graveyard for the builders of said fortress? Who knows? Number 3, Easter Island, Moai. These massive ancient statues have been quite popular in pop culture. They're pretty interesting to look at, but they're also pretty creepy. Reaching up to 13 feet tall and weighing over 80 tons, the indigenous Rapa Nui claim that these statues once roamed the land. That is so scary. 18th century Europeans had no idea how these things were built, but many were convinced that these statues were moving by themselves. Are aliens levitating these stones? Are they playing the world's largest game of chess? Or did humans somehow move these 1,000-pound rocks around with just their hands? They just pushed them as hard as they could. Another theory is that aliens of course built this in their own image, which is pretty badass. They're like, here, look at these giant statues. Remember our faces. Number 2. Chichen Itza. Once a booming city with a diverse population, Chichen Itza was a Mayan city located in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Now the Itza were a group of Mayans who had power in the northern part of the peninsula, right where this city was. Its main attraction is of course this ancient pyramid. If you've seen the movie The Ruins, you'll recognize this area and also get goosebumps. Instead of evil plant life, the pyramid does include signs of alien life. These hieroglyphs included advanced mathematics, and they say that it was bestowed upon them from the gods. Recently, about 200 artifacts were discovered in a cave under Chichen Itza, and also a lost city the size of Manhattan was found underground. The most interesting claim of alien life are these UFO landing sites also hidden deep in the surrounding jungles. Aliens definitely built this, and this is where they first lived. That's my claim. And finally, number 1, the lost city of the Incas. Currently a wonder of the modern world, Machu Picchu was built over 500 years ago. It was first discovered in 1911 by archaeologist Hiram Bingham when he and a small team were originally heading out to find the ancient city of Vilcabamba. But during their commute from Cusco, they found this landmark. Many of these stones of course weighed a lot, over 50 tons, and with Machu Picchu translating to Old Mountain, this seems like an impossible build from the Inca. The city is designed perfectly. I mean, after 500 years of foul weather, even earthquakes have yet to destroy this ancient city. It's pretty impressive. Just like in the Peruvian Andes, elongated skulls were too found at this site. Another sign of Inca royalty or another sign of alien builders. You already know my guess.
Starting off this countdown, we have Mark Zuckerberg. Rumor has it that Mark Zuckerberg is an alien or a lizard person. Let me explain. In a number of interviews, people notice that Mark Zuckerberg barely blinks. It's true. I've seen videos and this dude must have like some watery eyes or something, cause he blinked like once every minute. He just sat there with his eyes wide open, looking like an alien. Then people went on to say that he wears contact lenses to hide his yellow lizard pupils. Maybe that's why he's so smart, because he's an alien. Either that or he's a robot or something. His weird mannerisms has everyone spooked. Conspiracy theorists are adamant that he's going to take over the world and destroy democracy. It's crazy. Coming in at number 9, we have Jeffrey Bezos. I'm sensing a theme here, okay? People like to think that rich, powerful men are aliens. Jeffrey Bezos, CEO, entrepreneur, born in 1964, is another individual that might be an alien. Also, that was a reference to Bo Burnham. I love him. His song, Jeffrey Bezos, go check it out. Not only is he very intelligent, but people have been studying his mannerisms and think there's something wrong with him. Take a look at this.
But that was actually not supposed to be a bad pun. And then disclosure, you are...
Is it just me, or is his laugh undeniably creepy? He keeps his eyes wide open and locked on his target while laughing. Also, it seems forced. Maybe aliens don't have any emotions, so he has to force himself to laugh at jokes so he seems normal. I don't even know what to think anymore. Also, side note, someone deepfaked Jeffrey into a Star Trek episode, and let's just say I'm now scarred for life.
Is this a deception? Do you intend to destroy yourselves?
Moving on to number 8, we have Alien Barbie. Ukrainian woman Valeria Lukanova is known as the human Barbie doll. She's got an impossible tiny waist, wide doll-like eyes, and a big bust. In fact, to achieve this look, she had some of her ribs removed. But not only is she a real-life Barbie doll, but she also claims that she's a time-traveling alien. Yes, you heard me correctly. This woman claims that she's not human. She said that she's an alien that has come to Earth to save the world. Little late for that. But what is she saving us from, you ask? Well, she says negative energy. Okay. And she has a goal to transform humans into demigods. I mean, that's cool. I want to be a demigod, so sign me up for that. She also has claimed to be a breatharian. She says that she lives off of nothing but light and air. So maybe she really is an alien, because it's physically impossible to live off of just light and air. Like, you need food and water. Coming in at number 7, we have Grimes. Grimes might just be an alien, and so might be her partner, Elon Musk, but more on him later. But how cute! 2 aliens came from space and connected on Earth. That's what I call destiny and true love. Anyways, if you follow her, then you know she's quite the character. And just recently, she got alien scars on her back. Or at least that's what she calls them. They're just a bunch of light-colored lines that she got tattooed on her back. But maybe aliens actually have tattoos or designs like that on their backs, and she knows something that we don't know. I mean, there's a huge conspiracy out there that Grimes is an alien. Just search on Reddit and you'll find a number of people who believe this theory. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Steve Buscemi. And I just want to start off by saying that he's an amazing actor. Like, totally underrated, and I'm so happy talking about him because, also fun fact, we share the same birthday, so I just feel this connection to him. So Steve, if you're watching this, I want to be your friend. Anyways, people often judge Steve based off of his looks. I mean, I think he was on the list of like ugliest people in Hollywood or something like that, which like, that is mean. How did they get away with that? That's super hurtful. Lists like that just shouldn't exist, okay? But anyways, due to his unique appearance, people think that Steve is out of this world. They think that he's an alien or a cryptoid or something like that. There's even a bunch of memes out there making fun of Steve saying that he's an alien. I personally don't think he's one. Like, if we're judging based off looks, that's just mean. He's a great guy. But I still put him on this list for all you people out there that think that he could be one. Watch him actually be an alien. I'm like defending him. In our 4th spot, we have Tilda Swinton, who, might I add, is another incredible actor. Tilda's range is unbelievable. She is unrecognizable in some roles. Like, she goes from playing the White Witch in the Chronicles of Narnia, to the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, to Thora Thacker in Hail Caesar. She's just so versatile. And that's why some people think that she's an alien, because the ease in which she can transform her appearance and look like a completely different person, or the ease in which she can change her personality and behave like a completely different person.
I mean, I just call that good acting, but then other people are like, aliens! Also, people think that she's an alien because she has a unique appearance. Again, let's not judge a book by its cover here. It seems like the people trying to behave normally are the ones we should be concerned about, okay? In our third spot, we have Bill Gates. I wish I had the amount of wealth that Bill Gates had, and now he's single, so Bill, hit me up. Just kidding. You're too old for me. Anyways, according to some people, Bill is an alien. How come aliens always have to be the richest people? Like seriously, you got Mark, you got Jeffrey Bezos, and now Bill. How come all the alien dudes are rich? Anyways, the main reason why people think that he's an alien is due to his advanced knowledge on computers and technology. So aliens are supposed to be highly advanced creatures. They created highly advanced spacecrafts to travel throughout space and to Earth. Maybe Bill was sent from space to help advance human life. And then he liked it so much here that he decided to stick around. Or maybe he got too famous and was like, oh crap, I can't just disappear from the public eye. They're gonna wonder where I went. And now he's kind of stuck on Earth against his will. Moving on to number 2, we have Stephen Colbert. Honestly, he's the last person I would think to be an alien. But that's a good thing, right? It means that he's being stealthy about it. It's always the people you least expect. So a woman named Liz Brown came up with proof as to why she believes Stephen is an alien. Her first point is his intelligence. She said, and I quote, "A recent report showed that viewers of the Colbert Report are more well informed about political and social issues than viewers of legitimate news programs on ABC or CNN. Most alien experts agree that our interplanetary friends have a level of intelligence far beyond human capabilities. Of course, this could also mean that regular Colbert Report viewers are being groomed for abduction." End of quote. Imagine that, Stephen using his show to gain fans and then abduct them and use them in tests run by aliens. The next point she made is his immunity from diseases. She said that she has never seen him get sick. She said, and I quote, "What kind of regular human beings can consume Bud Light Lime on a regular basis on air and still not get sick?" End quote. She's kind of got a point there. She then also went on to talk about Stephen's love for space. In 2009, he made a public campaign telling his viewers to vote for the new treadmill on the International Space Station to be named after him. Why did he want this so badly? Well, it could be that this was a way to send a message to his alien friends out there, telling them like, we did it, I'm in control of the humans, this is proof. Crazy, isn't it? Makes you really think. And in our number 1 spot today we have Elon Musk. Why does Elon Musk want to go to Mars so bad? Honestly, he just wants to return to his home planet. He has announced a number of times that he wants to retire and die on Mars. He probably hates it here on Earth and is dying to get back. Let's look at more evidence. This dude invented the Tesla, like he's super intelligent. First off, he got into the electrical vehicle business, which only represents 0.1% of all cars sold. Looking at that, it would seem like a bad thing to get into. But nonetheless, he did and he succeeded. Why? Because he's got alien capabilities to not only see into the future, but also create high-tech things, like Teslas. Someone else added that his end goal is to save Earth. He's seen into the future and how bad global warming gets. So he's trying to reduce global emissions through his cars. Maybe make them cheaper then. Not only that, but on a number of occasions he has tweeted out some suspicious things. Someone tweeted at him asking if he was an alien, and he said, obviously. So, he just admitted it, okay? I know he's just joking, but still. Another time he tweeted saying aliens built the pyramids. I mean, he was probably one of the aliens there building them alongside the Egyptians. In the end, everything he's doing on Earth is to save us, and then, you know, help himself get back to his home planet.
It's coming in at number 10, we have Project Twinkle. A number of green fireballs in the sky over United States military bases promoted Project Twinkle in 1949. On the evening of December the 5th, 1948, 2 plane crashes, one military in Albuquerque and one civilian in Las Vegas, reported that they had seen green balls of fire. The military crew reported that the light was huge, like a green meteor that strangely curved upwards rather than hurtling to Earth. On top of that, just 3 days later, 2 United States Air Force Force of Special Investigations workers witnessed a green fireball when they were flying an aircraft. Throughout December of that year, more Air Force workers saw the phenomenon. Then, on January the 30th, 1949, the biggest and most widely seen green fireball was sighted near Roswell. Hello. This led to the Air Force classifying the instance as top secret. Now, a year after the first fireball was spotted, Project Twinkle began. Twinkle was able to record a few events, but the data was inconclusive. Goodness gracious, green balls of fire, right? Coming in at number 9, we have the Pori Finnish Air Force sighting. The Finnish Air Force have only ever officially acknowledged one UFO sighting, and that was in April 1969 in Pori. 7 yellow disc-shaped objects were seen hovering in a formation above Pori Airport. When a fighter pilot was scrambled to intercept the UFOs, they accelerated away at an incredible speed. In the same minute, they were spotted on radar 200 kilometers away, which is nigh on impossible. A plane chased after them at 700 kilometers an hour, but they were not able to catch up. There was actually an Oscar award-winning documentary about the case called Visitors from Space, which you should check out. Links again in the description. Ooh, this is a good one. Coming into number 8, we have Foo Fighters. And no, I don't mean the awesome band fronted by Dave Grohl. Also good though. I mean the UFO sightings by Allied pilots in World War II. The 415th Squadron, a United States Air Force unit, were flying over the Rhine in Germany in November 1944 when they saw multicolored lights they described being like Christmas lights, but in the sky. The objects flew alongside their aircraft at 200 miles per hour. They were described as being red, orange, green, and white. They appeared singularly, but sometimes they would appear in formations of 10. It was also said that they could outmaneuver the aeroplanes they were flying against. The squadron then called it in. Historian Richard Zybart said, "The pilots were very professional. They gave the report, they talked about the lights, but they didn't speculate about them." Foo Fighters were also seen by the 8th Air Force of the United Kingdom over Belgium, and again by the United States Air Forces in the South Pacific by the military in the 1960s. At the time, there were theories that actually they were a secret Nazi weapon, or indeed aliens. To this day, we don't know who or what the Foo Fighters were. All my life I've been searching for something, something never comes, never leads to aliens. I think that's what Dave Grohl was trying to tell us. Coming into number 7, we have ghost rockets. Swedish military defense were on high alert when they spotted rockets in February 1946, some 5 months after the First World War informally ended. About 2,000 sightings were logged between May and December 1946 by military personnel, but just 200 were recorded on radar. The Swedish army released a photograph of one of the rockets, which is still an unsolved mystery to this day. No targets were ever reported to have been struck, but at the time, it was thought that they were long-range test missiles from the Soviets. This was largely rejected though, because fragments were never officially found. Reports were made of objects crashing into lakes. A witness even saw a grey rocket fall into Lake Kolmarv in June of 1946. The Swedish military underwent several dive missions in a number of lakes to try and even look for these ghost missiles, but they found nothing other than, I guess, like craters and slightly disturbed aquatic life. The military opinion from both Sweden and the United States was not officially decided upon, but a declassified document from the time suggests that some were convinced that they were alien flying saucers. By 1947, the ghost rockets had stopped, so what were they? War nerves or aliens? You decide at number 6. We have the infamous Battle of Los Angeles. Between February the 24th and 25th, 1942, just a few months after Pearl Harbor, a large number of flared and bright lights were reported near defense stations in LA. It seems that naval intelligence on the Californian coast warned of a potential attack that evening, and military radar suggested that there was indeed enemy contact. People were freaked out, the city was blackened and air raid sirens sounded. Strange lights were spotted in the sky over Santa Monica, leading to troops firing machine guns into the sky. One coastal artilleryman claimed to have seen 6 planes, but after 1,400 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition fired into the sky, nothing was ever shot down. There was no attack, or was there? Secretary of War Henry Stimson echoed army brass in saying that at least 15 planes had buzzed into this city. Some people concluded that it was psychological warfare on the part of the Japanese. Others straight up believed that it was aliens. Those pesky aliens. We have viral aliens up next at number 5. We have the USS Nimitz incident. Objects were detected in restricted military training airspaces in November 2004, and video was subsequently released of a Navy fighter jet interception of a UFO over the Pacific Ocean. The footage was leaked to the press in 2017 and quickly went viral, but many were quick to claim that it just wasn't authentic. However, just a couple of days ago, as of the scripting of this video in 2019, the United States Navy have actually confirmed that the video is authentic and does include unidentified flying objects. The Navy is trying to update their protocol for pilots reporting UFOs in order to reduce the stigma. We still have absolutely no idea what the UFO was. Coming into number 4, we have 2014 to 2015. Get ready, because this is heavy. An article in Rolling Stone magazine claimed that the United States Navy had reported UFOs on a near daily basis between Virginia and Florida in 2014 and 2015. This also seemed to be confirmed by the New York Times. Now, the sightings began in the summer of 2014 when Navy pilots reported UFOs 30,000 feet into the sky, reaching hypersonic speeds as they were conducting training maneuvers below. According to Lieutenant Danny Acoyne, the objects had no distinct wing, no distinct tail, no distinct exhaust pipe. He continued by saying it seemed as if the objects were aware of their presence because they would actively move around them. Further to that, at the same time, further Navy pilots were reporting an influx of unidentified flying objects off the east coast to the Pentagon. What was going on? Coming into number 3, we have the Kinross incident. In November 1953, a United States Air Force pilot disappeared after investigating a UFO over Lake Superior on the border to Canada. Felix Monclar scrambled an F-89C Scorpion jet from the Kinross Air Force Base with another member of the Air Force, Robert Wilson, acting as a radar operator down below. Ground control claims that the UFO and the plane grew close on the radar screen. They were going towards each other, and then at one point they even seemed to merge. The then unidentified object continued its previous course, and the plane disappeared. Searchers were sent out for it. It was never found. A search was indeed conducted, and it seems that parts of the plane may have been uncovered several years later in 1968, but the identity of the parts was never published. Many think it was all a ruse. The body of Monclar was never found, and neither was any trace of the UFO, so we just don't know what happened that night. There have been a number of military whistleblowers over the years. At number 2, I want to talk about Charles Hall and the Tall Whites. Charles Hall used to serve in the United States military as part of the Air Force, stationed in, wait for it, Nevada, aka the home of Area 51. Although it seems that Hall, who worked as a meteorologist, was actually based at the Nellis Air Force Base, which was around an hour away from Area 51, but still. Hall claims that back in the 1960s, the Air Force were actually in cahoots with aliens. He said that the United States military exchanged technology with quote-unquote tall whites, a blonde-haired human-like race of aliens. Hall continued by saying that there was a hangar at the base. Now I quote, "A ship would come into the side of the mountain on the nights of a full moon." I mean, what? Hall also claimed that aliens would travel with CIA agents to Las Vegas casinos for entertainment. Rightio then. That actually does go hand in hand with a lot of other alien conspiracy theories out there though. A lot of people do think that the government have been working with aliens for a long time. I honestly don't know what to say about the Las Vegas bit though. Even crazier at number 1, this comes from Canada's former Defence Minister Paul Hellyer, so how can we argue? This is crazy, hold on to your hats, because if not, they're getting blown away. Paul Hellyer used to hold one of the top jobs in Canada. He's an engineer with a long career in politics and military logistics. The man claims to have helped found the International UFO Landing Pad in Alberta. In 2005, he claimed to have seen UFO for himself, and in 2014, he confirmed the existence of tall whites. He said that he was aware of at least 4 species of aliens that have been visiting planet Earth for thousands of years. He claimed that 2 of the species are directly working with the United States. He also claimed that the different species are from different places and they should not be considered as one entity because they have different agendas. He says that the aliens that humans have encountered do not think that we're good stewards of our planet, and I'm inclined to agree. Hellyer is still a member of the Privy Council in Canada and is, by and large, a very credible source. Force.
Number 10, UAP report. Alien fans and skeptics alike were pretty shocked when just a few months ago the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, said that they believed in aliens. Well, actually, they said they were going to be investigating unidentified flying objects, but close enough. While some people did believe that this was NASA saying, hey, we believe in aliens, it was actually them announcing they were going to launch a study into UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, because I guess they're just too good to say UFO. The scientist coordinating the study said, over the decades, NASA has answered the call to tackle some of the most perplexing mysteries we know of, and this is no different. In the report, they said that a good chunk of confirmed unidentified objects seemed to show evidence that they were made using advanced technology that humans just don't have yet. Number 9, injuries. A Freedom of Information Act request caused 1,500 pages of UFO reports and evidence to be declassified and leaked to the public. And what the pages contained was pretty shocking for those who read it. A percentage of the pages included information of how people who reported seeing UFOs and aliens had been legitimately physically affected. Real physical evidence that something unexplained had happened to them. Some of the reports included things like burns, which could have been caused by the jets of a UFO, or potential face-to-face alien interference. Bafflingly, they also confirmed that women who had come into contact with aliens shortly fell mysteriously pregnant after the event, with no explanation as to why they were suddenly with child. Yes, we all know by now how mommy and daddy make babies, but that apparently wasn't a factor in these cases. Alien babies potentially on the way. Number 8, FLIR. Alongside these 1,500 documents, 3 separate videos were released that appeared to show UFOs being spotted by the United States military, so let's take a look. The first is titled FLIR and was originally filmed back in 2004 when the USS Nimitz was flying off the coast of Southern California. There had apparently already been an unidentified aircraft in the area for up to a week before the video was filmed. Off the coast, they spotted a large oval-shaped object, estimating it to be about 40 feet long and white in color. 4 people on the craft saw the object for a running total of about 5 minutes, although the video is only just over a minute. They were able to track it using their advanced infrared camera, and due to the object's shape, they nicknamed it the Tic Tac. All these videos to this day have no real explanation for what the UFOs actually were. Number 7, gimbal. Next up on the list we have the video titled Gimbal, which was leaked alongside the last one I just talked about. This one's different because we can hear the people in the jet reacting to what they're seeing. They use a similar infrared camera and follow the object that was flying over the East Coast. At first, they comment that it might be some kind of drone, but then note that it is fighting against incredibly strong winds and appearing to not be affected by it at all. They even comment that there are other unidentified crafts in the area, but we don't actually see them as it's locked onto the target. What's interesting about this one, as the people in the video point out, is that it moves in an incredibly strange fashion, appearing to rotate and move around despite the heavy winds it's apparently fighting against. My favorite part of this is that there's one guy calmly stating facts about it while the other cusses and yells in excitement. Is that a f***ing drone, dude? Number 6, go fast. The third and final leaked video is probably the best of the bunch, as the video starts before they have managed to lock onto the target and you can see it moving. The video is pretty correctly titled Go Fast because this thing is moving incredibly fast, like definitely faster than anything else that could have been an easy explanation. It's zipping over the top of the water as they try to get their camera to lock onto it, and when they finally do, they start cheering because of just how difficult it was due to how fast the object was moving. Their comments are a mix of excitement and confusion in regards to what they've managed to find, saying, "Look at that thing fly," while also going, "What the f*** is that thing?" People often like to write off UFOs as some sort of secret military practice vessels or training project, so what can it be when the military itself doesn't know what they saw? Number 5, Pentagon report. In May of this year, the Pentagon appeared on a panel where they discussed UFOs, and they revealed revealed just how much information they have about the situation. They said that there are around 400 separate reports of unidentified flying objects coming from military personnel. So while we do have the 3 leaked videos, there are likely even more locked up in a safe somewhere that offer convincing evidence of the existence of aliens. The Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence said, "We've seen an increasing number of unauthorized and/or unidentified aircraft or objects, and military control training areas and training ranges and other designated airspace. Reports of sightings are frequent and continuous." While it definitely sounds like he's trying to sweep it under the rug as someone just like flying a drone illegally onto a military base or something, I think it's safe to say the military have the resources to know if it were something as simple as that. So their confusion and uncertainty makes it seem more and more like aliens are among us. Number 4. Live stream. In 2016, an incident occurred during NASA's live feed from a camera mounted on the International Space Station that pointed towards the Earth. You can see the Earth's curve, and one viewer noticed that for a short moment, a massive bright object can be seen falling towards the planet. But as quickly as it comes, it's gone as the live feed conveniently cuts out and experiences technical difficulties. The video was posted to YouTube, and people immediately started theorizing that NASA had intentionally cut the live feed at this moment to cover up the fact that this bright shape was a UFO, or at least something alien in origin. Many people noted how suspicious this was and started calling out NASA for their actions, while other people were saying that it was just a meteor or some hunk of space junk. A spokesperson for NASA said that the cameras are controlled automatically, and it had simply passed out of range, causing the video to be cut off. But that's just what they want you to think. Number 3. Alien junk. An astrophysicist from Harvard wrote a book that was titled Extraterrestrial: The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, and it was about how he believed that an object that passed through the solar system in 2017 was actually a piece of alien technology, bringing forward the theory that NASA is actually just ignoring real evidence of alien existence because they're just brushing it off as some random space junk. Whether they believe it really is space junk or they're just trying to make us think that that's what it is. The object was long and not shaped like any known comet we've ever seen before. It also apparently accelerated away from the sun, and he believes it ended up in our solar system accidentally thanks to aliens, saying, "A buoy, a grid of pods for communication, other intelligent living organisms, defunct technology, or discarded technological trash. These are all plausible explanations." Number 2. Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin was one of a handful of astronauts who were aboard the Apollo 11, the first spaceflight that put humans on the moon with one small step for man. During their journey, however, they saw more than just the moon. Apparently, they may have seen a UFO. They reported seeing large objects that appeared to follow alongside them. It was confirmed not to be the upper stage of the rocket that would have been detached, as this was 6,000 miles away from them at the time. The event was kept under wraps, and nobody talked about it until it was brought up years later, sweeping it under the rug as simply a panel that had disconnected from the ship. But again, that's just what they want you to think. The claims coming from a senior NASA scientist who said he had just called up Buzz on the phone and he had agreed. Did you really talk to him on the phone, senior NASA scientist? Did you really? Number 1. ISS report. Alright, this one's not actually NASA because it actually comes from a Russian astronaut aboard the International Space Station, and I'm just gonna count it because it's a pretty cool video. He was on board the ISS using his camera to record the southern lights, which are the same as the northern lights but in the south. It's a time-lapse recording, and for a brief moment you can see a line of large bright lights moving across the sky. In the tweet the astronaut posted, he referred to them as space guests, saying that while it was only a few seconds in the time-lapse, it was actually around 52 seconds in real time. Some people suggest that it may have been some kind of meteor or satellite, but I'm actually a licensed professional and I say that it was aliens. Number 10. NASA hacked. So first off, how do things like this from NASA even manage to get leaked? Well, apparently by British guys like Gary McKinnon hacking into their system. Between the years 2001 and 2002, Gary broke broke into 97 different government computers, believing NASA was hiding signs of alien life because of thousands of pictures of UFOs he found hidden away. A former NASA employee had said that satellite images were checked for UFOs and deleted if they showed any evidence, and Gary decided he wanted to break into NASA in order to validate these claims. He says that he found 4 different folders titled Filtered, Unfiltered, Processed, and Raw. He says that his slow internet connection only made him able to download 1 image before he lost access to the rest of them, the picture apparently being a clear image of a cigar-shaped spacecraft. Gary believes that NASA is hiding a wealth of UFO evidence from the public. Number 9. Edgar Mitchell. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell landed on the moon with the Apollo 14 mission, and he also believed that aliens helped prevent a conflict between the United States and Russia. He claimed that top military officials were hiding evidence of unidentified flying objects, and the fact that they were apparently often spotted hovering over White Sands testing range in New Mexico. In 2015, he said, "White Sands was a testing ground for atomic weapons, and that's what the extraterrestrials were interested in. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear the ETs had been attempting to keep us from going to war and help create peace on Earth." He stated that the military had given him loads of information on aliens and their interactions with Earth, and after he left NASA, he dedicated his life and studies to looking into extraterrestrial existence. Number 8. Mars photos. A man named Richard Hoagland believes that NASA knows a lot more about Mars than they're letting on. He believes that astronauts have been to Mars and that there's a plethora of evidence of alien life on Mars that NASA is insistent on covering up. During the Viking 1 orbit in 1976, NASA released various photographs of the surface of Mars, and some of them seemed to show various different structures and one that apparently even looked like the Sphinx. This led people to believe that these structures had been built by aliens who lived on the Red Planet. Years later, in 1998, NASA took more pictures to debunk the theory, showing only rocks, but Richard and others believe that this is them trying to hide the truth and shrinking the structures that were previously on the planet. He also pulled up a NASA commissioned report from 1960 that recommended any future discoveries of alien life be hidden from the public so as not to disrupt the evolutionary flow of the century. Number 7. Sun object. Last video I talked about NASA cutting off their ISS feed when people believed that they saw a UFO falling towards the Earth. This one is a similar scenario, except it came from footage of the sun. In May of 2012, a YouTube user posted a video of a mysterious object seen flying near the sun in NASA's broadcast. The video zooming in on the pyramid-shaped object that many believe to be some sort of alien craft flying near the sun. A day later, NASA shut down the video feed. In a second video, the user said, "This is a cover-up to prevent us from seeing these things again. NASA must have seen this video and started making plans to change the way you and I are allowed to view it. NASA are clearly trying to stop us looking at the sun." Alien deniers may say that this is just some sort of camera glitch or sun flare, but I think we all know the truth. People telling you not to look at the sun is actually just propaganda so we don't see the aliens. And I'm just gonna say quickly for legal reasons that I do not actually condone staring into the sun. Number 6. The Cube. This also isn't the only case of NASA cutting off the sun livestream after suspicious activity. It happened just this year in May as well. On May 2nd at around 1 in the afternoon, a large black cube appeared to come out of the sun, visible for about 2 seconds. A glitch then appeared on the live stream covering a large part of it, and after it clears, the cube is gone. An expert posted this to YouTube going over the footage and claims that this is evidence of some sort of alien spaceship coming out of the sun. Perhaps they have a secret alien base in there. Also, I say expert because he is a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, and honestly, I'm gonna start calling myself that as well. You guys are watching a video from an expert now, people. Most people in the comments claim that this was just some sort of square-shaped solar flare, while another even claimed it was the manifestation of an angel gaining power from the sun. Number 5. Evidence scale. This one is not so much leaked, but was instead part part of an announcement that NASA was going to become more serious about trying to discover life on other planets. They announced that they are going to have a scale to measure extraterrestrial evidence so that it's not as black and white as life or no life. Proposed by NASA Chief Scientist Jim Green, the scale includes 7 different levels, which ranks evidence of life based on their environment and the opinions of the scientific community at large. The highest levels on the scale are of course level 6, verifying signs of life with several different instruments, and level 7, and on different locations on the world. They said in a statement, "We need a better way to share the excitement of our discoveries and demonstrate how each discovery builds on the next, so that we can bring the public and other scientists along on the journey. This new eagerness to bring people along on the journey of discovery could be a sign that they're warming us up to revealing aliens." Number 4. Meteorite. In 2011, a NASA scientist came out claiming that they had found legitimate evidence of alien life, this being from fossils inside a meteorite that landed on Earth. Richard Hoover said that he found evidence of what is basically microscopic little alien bugs, or as the science people call it, filaments and other structures that appear to be fossils of algae known as cyanobacteria, little alien bugs. Laboratory tests done found no evidence that they were the remains of Earth-based organisms, despite being slightly similar to organisms that have been found in the waterways of Spain. Hoover says that the lack of nitrogen, which is essential for life on Earth, proves that they are the remains of extraterrestrial life forms that grew on the parent bodies of the meteorites when liquid water was present, long before the meteorites entered the Earth's atmosphere. This isn't the first time that this sort of evidence has been found on meteorites, and it probably won't be the last. Number 3. Anonymous. We know that the infamous Gary McKinnon managed to hack into the NASA databases and find secret UFO pictures, but did you know that the group known as Anonymous did it as well? In 2017, they made a 12.5-minute long YouTube video where they claimed to have gained access to secret NASA information, telling people that NASA was covering up the discovery of alien life. They said that the organization had recently found 219 new planet candidates, 10 having very similar conditions to Earth. Because of this, the group came to believe that NASA was either incredibly close to finding alien life or had already found it. They also stated that this was a sign NASA was getting closer and closer to revealing the truth about aliens. And while many people brushed it off as being ridiculous, we now know that NASA has just revealed their new UFO study, so Anonymous may have been closer to the truth than we thought. Number 2. Black Knight Satellite. Alright, now let's get into some stuff that is a little more conspiratorial than usual, if that's even possible, and various different ways that people believe NASA is trying to cover stuff up, but apparently not doing a good enough job. There is a conspiracy that there is a satellite called the Black Knight Satellite, which was set up by aliens more than 12,000 years ago in order to spy on humans. Photos from the first shuttle trip to the International Space Station in 1998 appeared to show a large black object hovering over Earth, and people believed it was the first photographic evidence of the Black Knight satellite. All previous evidence from years before were just things like radio signals. They also believed that back in the early 1900s, Nikola Tesla actually picked up signals from the Black Knight. Whether or not you actually believe in the existence of the satellite spying on us apparently doesn't matter anymore, as it was reportedly shot down by the Illuminati in 2017. Number 1. Hollow Earth. Alright, this one's not so much about aliens, but trust me on this, I am a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, okay? In 2016, one YouTube user suggested that NASA was trying to cover up the existence of something at the North and South poles. Old satellite images of Earth from space appear to apparently show some sort of a massive hole at each end of the Earth, what they claim to be an entrance. If you're not sold on the flat Earth theory, then let me introduce you to Hollow Earth. As its name suggests, the truth is apparently that the inside of the Earth is hollow and actually contains inner Earth complete with its own sun. Explorers have apparently seen the inner Earth firsthand when flying over the North Pole. So this is just a cool, crazy conspiracy, and it doesn't actually really relate to aliens, but I just wanted to talk about it. So as an alien expert, I'm just gonna say that the inner Earth Earth is actually where all the aliens live and they control us from the inside.